Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the stories.
My name is Bobby Tucker. Been a ranger out here in the Ozark National Forest going on 3 years now. This August evening feels different though. Something's not right. The air hangs heavy around me, thick with humidity that makes my uniform stick to my skin. I've never heard the cicadas this loud before. Their chorus is almost deafening, drowning out my thoughts as I walk along this familiar trail. Strange thing is, I feel oddly calm. Maybe I shouldn't. What with all those livestock attacks in nearby farms these past few weeks, cows found drained of blood, sheep torn apart. Locals are scared, and honestly, I should be too. Just animals, I keep telling myself. Nothing but hungry predators. The sun's starting to set, casting everything in a blood-red glow. I've seen plenty of sunsets in these woods, but this one feels wrong somehow. The crimson light filters through the leaves, making shadows dance like living things. I notice something odd, bats circling overhead. In daylight, that's not normal. Neither are those dogs howling non-stop from the valley below. Animals know. Things sometimes sense danger before we do. My radio crackles with static. I tap it against my palm. Base, this is Tucker. You reading me? Nothing but white noise answers back. Great, I'm completely alone out here. 50 square miles of wilderness and no backup. An opossum crosses my path, stopping right in the middle of the trail. It turns and stares at me, unblinking, unafraid. I've never seen one act so bold. Usually, they scurry away at the first sign of humans. Go on, get, I mutter, waving my hand. It doesn't move, just watches me with those beady eyes. I step around it, feeling its gaze on my back as I continue down the path. The air gets thicker, with each step, like I'm trying to breathe through wet cotton. Sweat trickles down my neck, despite the cooling evening. Up ahead, the game trail I've been following suddenly disappears into a wall of thorny underbrush. That's weird. I know these paths like the back of my hand, and this wasn't here last week. The branches seem woven together, forming passages like a maze. As I stand there trying to figure out which way to go, I feel a strange electric tension. In the air, the hair on my arms stands straight up, and my skin tingles like right before a lightning strike. Something's watching me. I can feel it. I reach for my flashlight, though there's still some daylight left. Just having it in my hand makes me feel better. Hello, I call out, immediately regretting it. My voice sounds small, swallowed by the vastness of these ancient woods. The forest doesn't answer. Even the cicadas have gone quiet now. The silence is worse than the noise. That's when I realize I need to find Jim. He's supposed to meet me at Crooked Creek Junction, and I'm already running late. If anyone knows what's happening in these woods, it's Jim Dalton. Been hunting these hills since before I was born. I check my compass. North should take me to the creek, but the needle's spinning wildly, unable to find magnetic north. Something is very, very wrong in my forest tonight. People around here don't know much about me, and I like it that way. 28 years old, and already feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes. Before I became a forest ranger, I was a Marine Corps dog handler. Me and Rex, my Belgian Malinois, served 2 tours together. He saved my life more times than I can count. I reach into my jacket pocket and feel the worn leather of Rex's collar. Carrying it everywhere has become a habit I can't break. When things get tough, just touching it calms me down. Rex died saving me from an IED. The shrapnel that killed him left me with scars too, both the kind you can see and the kind you can't. The tattoos covering my arms hide most of the physical ones. I keep my hair military short still. Old habits die hard. My ex-wife says the war changed me. Maybe she's right. Last month, the judge gave her full custody of our little girl. Emily said I wasn't stable enough. Can't really blame him. Showing up to court with whiskey on your breath doesn't make the best impression. I take out my first aid kit and open the hidden compartment where I keep my flask. The bourbon burns going down, but it steadies my nerves. I know it's a problem. I just can't seem to stop. You out here, Jim? I call out, knowing I'm still at least a mile from our meeting spot. Jim Dalton's the best hunting guide in 3 counties, 60-something with a beard like Santa and eyes that miss nothing. He knows every hollow and ridge in these mountains. If something strange is happening in the forest, Jim would have noticed. The path ahead forks, and I take the left trail without thinking. After 2 years assigned to this section, I can navigate by memory, stars, or landmarks. Right now, though, even familiar places look different in this blood-red light. I checked my watch. 7:42 p.m. Jim's probably already at the junction, wondering where I am. I pick up my pace, the flask sloshing in my pocket. Truth is, this investigation feels personal somehow. Like I'm not just tracking whatever's killing livestock, I'm facing something inside me too. All those nightmares about Rex, about the war, about failing Emily as a father. They're following me into these woods tonight. Part of me wonders if I'll come out of these trees the same man who walked in. Another part wonders if I want to. I spot something ahead, a clearing I don't recognize. The trees open up to reveal a small meadow bathed in the last crimson rays of sunlight. The tall grass waves without wind. This isn't right, I mutter to myself. There shouldn't be a clearing here. I pull out my map, but my hands aren't steady. The bourbon isn't helping like it used to. I need more to get the same calm feeling. Tonight feels like a turning point. Like whatever happens in these woods will either save what's left of me or finish the job that started when Rex died and my marriage fell apart. I take a deep breath and step into the clearing, drawn forward by something I can't explain. The grass parts before me like water. That's when I hear it, a sound that doesn't belong in these woods. A sound that makes my combat instincts kick in immediately. A scream, human, terrified. It's coming from the direction of Crooked Creek Junction, where Jim should be waiting for me. I break into a run, the flask forgotten, Rex's collar clutched, tight, in my fist. Whatever's happening, I won't let someone else die on my watch. Not tonight. I ran until my lungs burned, following that scream through the darkening forest. The path twisted in ways that didn't make sense. Trees I'd passed 100 times looked different now, like strangers wearing familiar faces. When I finally broke through to a small clearing, I stopped dead in my tracks. My flashlight beam caught something that made my stomach turn. A core, what was left of one, lay sprawled on the forest floor. Its body was completely drained of blood, the hide pale and sunken against the bones. 2 small puncture wounds marked its neck, clean and precise like nothing I'd ever seen before. What the hell could do this? I whispered, as if in answer. The forest went completely silent. 1 second, crickets and frogs were making their usual night music. The next, nothing, like someone had flipped a switch. Even the breeze died, leaving the air still and heavy. I swept my flashlight around, suddenly aware of how alone I was. 50 square miles of wilderness, and I was the only ranger on duty. Tonight, that's when I spotted Eta torn tent about 20 yards away, hidden among some bushes. Not just torn, but shredded, like something had ripped through it with giant claws. A sleeping bag lay half out of the opening, soaked dark with what could only be blood. "Hello, anyone here?" I called, already knowing there wouldn't be an answer. I searched the area but found no campers, no bodies, nothing to explain where they'd gone. Just drag marks leading deeper into the woods, then disappearing completely. The air had a strange smell like blood, mixed with something else. Something that reminded me of rotten eggs or burning matches. Sulfur, it made me gag. I tried my radio again. "Base, this is Tucker. I've got a situation at I." Checked my GPS, but the screen was glitching, numbers jumping around wildly. "I'm about to miles east of Crooked Creek Junction. Possible missing campers," and the radio squealed with feedback so loud I dropped it. When I picked it up again, it was dead. Battery drained completely, though I'd charged it that morning. Jim, I remembered suddenly. He's still out here, somewhere. I headed toward our meeting spot, moving faster now. The darkness was almost complete, the moon not yet risen above the trees. My flashlight beam bounced through the underbrush, catching glimpses of movement that vanished when I looked directly at them. That's when I found Jim's rifle. It lay on the ground, bent nearly in half. Not broken, but bent, like someone had folded it. I picked it up, feeling the weight of the steel. No human could do this. It would take machinery, a hydraulic press maybe. "Jim," I shouted, no longer caring what might hear me. "Jim." My flashlight beam swept upward by chance, and I froze. There, in the branches about 30 feet up, a pair of eyes reflected the light glowing red, like hot coals. Too big for any animal native to these woods. Too high for a bear or mountain lion. As I watched, they blinked and vanished. An unearthly shriek tore through the night, so loud and high-pitched it felt like needles in my ears. I dropped to my knees, hands pressed against my head, the sound physically painful. When it finally stopped, I staggered to my feet, disoriented. That's when I saw Jim's baseball cap on the ground ahead of me. I approached slowly, flashlight beam fixed on it. Something dark and wet matted the inside. When I turned it over with a stick, I nearly threw up. A piece of scalp was still attached to it, with graying hair that I recognized as Jim's. His nearby rocks were splattered with gray matter and blood. My friend was dead, and whatever killed him wasn't natural. A strange fog began rolling in, though the night was clear and still. Within minutes, I could barely see 10 feet in any direction. The flashlight beam just bounced back at me, useless. I tried to find my way back to the main trail, but nothing looked right. Paths I'd walked 1,000 times led me in circles. Trees seemed to have moved, forming barriers where there should have been clearings. I was lost in a forest I knew better than my own apartment, and something was hunting me. I took out my flask and drained it in one long swallow. The bourbon didn't steady my nerves this time. Nothing would, because now I could hear it moving through the fog. Heavy footsteps, snorting breaths, the snap of branches under something massive, and it was getting closer. The moon finally rose above the treetops, huge and blood-red, casting everything in a crimson glow that made the fog look like floating pools of blood. I crouched behind a fallen oak, trying to control my breathing. Something massive moved through the trees nearby. I couldn't see it clearly through the fog, just glimpses of shadow crossing the moonlight, branches bending under weight, undergrowth crushed by heavy steps. Then I saw it. A giant shadow passed in front of the moon, wings spread wide like a bat's but enormous, blocking out the stars. Whatever this thing was, it could fly. And it was big, much bigger than any bird or bat that should exist in Arkansas, or anywhere on Earth. I felt like a mouse being circled by a hawk. Every instinct told me to run, but I knew better. Running would only trigger the chase response, so I stayed perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. The thing landed somewhere behind me with a heavy thud that shook the ground. I heard snuffling, like a horse smelling the air. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming my way. "Daddy, Daddy, help me," my daughter's voice. Emily's voice, coming from just beyond the fallen tree. I almost stood up, almost called out to her. But Emily was hundreds of miles away with her mother. Safe. This wasn't my daughter. "Daddy, I'm scared. Where are you?" The voice was perfect, every inflection, every little tremor exactly how Emily sounds when she's frightened. But it was coming from something that had just flown over me with massive wings. Cold sweat ran down my back as I realized this thing was smart. It was using my worst fear against Mitha. Fear of failing to protect my child, just like I'd failed to protect Rex. I clutched his collar tighter and stayed put. The creature moved closer. I could see its shadow now, stretched across the ground by the moonlight, a misshapen silhouette with a horse-like head, but the proportions were all wrong. Too large, with a neck too long, and those wings. I took out my flask again, desperate for one more swallow to steady my nerves. But as soon as I opened it, near the creature, the metal began to corrode in my hand, the bourbon inside bubbling. Like acid, I dropped it, watching in horror as the metal disintegrated on contact with the ground. The thing sniffed loudly, its attention drawn by the movement. It turned toward my hiding place. I got my first clear look at it then, and my mind struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. It had the head of a horse, but with teeth no herbivore should have, long and sharp. Its body was muscular, covered in leathery skin. A pair of massive bat wings folded against its sides. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, fixing on me with terrible intelligence. A forked tail whipped behind it. This was no animal. This was the Jersey Devil, a creature I'd heard stories about since childhood, but never believed. Never until now. It took a step toward me, nostrils flaring. It seemed particularly interested in Rex's collar, which I still held in my white-knuckled grip. Then it let out a sounder, bone-chilling neigh that was nothing like a horse's call. It was deeper, laced with something that sounded almost like laughter. The sound froze the blood in my veins. I broke and ran, crashing through underbrush, jumping over logs. I sprinted with the desperation of prey in open country. Behind me, I heard wings unfold with a leathery snap. The thing took to the air again, circling above the trees, tracking me easily. Every path I took seemed to end in a fallen tree or impassable thicket. No matter which direction I turned, I found my way blocked. The creature was herding me, I realized with growing horror that it was driving me toward the old Blackwater mine, the abandoned shaft that had been closed for decades after a collapse killed 12 miners back in the 60s, a place locals avoided, claiming it was cursed. The air around me seemed to shimmer and bend, like looking through heat waves on summer asphalt. Reality itself felt thin near this creature, as if the normal rules didn't quite apply anymore. I stumbled into a clearing and saw the mine entrance. Ahead, a dark mouth in the hillside, rotting support beams barely holding back tons of earth and rock. The perfect trap. The Jersey Devil landed between me and the only path leading away from the mine. It folded its wings and stared at me with those glowing red eyes. Intelligent eyes. Hungry eyes. It lowered its horse-like head and pawed the ground. With a cloven hoof, like a bull about to charge. There was nowhere left to run except into the mine. I knew that's exactly what it wanted, but I also knew I was out of options. I turned and sprinted for the mine entrance, the creature's hot breath on my neck, driving me deeper into the darkness. The mine swallowed me like a grave. My flashlight beam cut through thick darkness, revealing rotting support beams and walls. Of rough-cut stone, the air smelled of damp earth and decay. Every step I took sent loose rocks skittering down the sloping floor. The Jersey Devil didn't follow me in immediately. I could hear it pacing outside the entrance, those heavy hooves scraping on stone, its breathing loud in the night air. It was toying with me, like a cat with a cornered mouse. I moved deeper into the mine, knowing I was doing exactly what it wanted, but seeing no other choice. The shaft narrowed, ceiling dropping lower, forcing me to crouch. Old wooden supports creaked ominously overhead. This whole place could come down with one wrong move. My hands shook as I aimed the flashlight, but not from fear alone. It had been hours since my last drink, and my body was demanding more. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool underground air. My heart raced too fast, vision blurring at the edges. Of all the times for withdrawal to hit, it had to be now. I reached a small chamber where the shaft split in two directions. Mining equipment lay abandoned where workers had dropped it decades ago when the collapse happened. Rusty pickaxes, shovels, a broken lantern, and a box of old dynamite. The sticks sweating nitroglycerin after years of dampness. Highly unstable. An idea formed in my mind, a desperate one. Outside, the creature let out another of those terrible neighs. Closer now, it was coming in after me. I quickly gathered the dynamite sticks, handling them with extreme care. One wrong jostle could trigger an explosion. I placed them against the weakest-looking support beams, creating a ring around the chamber. Then I found an old miner's lamp with some fuel still in it, and positioned it next to the dynamite. My plan was simple: lure the creature into the chamber, somehow knock over the lamp, and run like hell down one of the other tunnels before the place came down on both of us. Not much of a plan, but it was all I had. I crouched in the shadows, waiting. My hands trembled worse now. I clutched Rex's collar, running my thumb over the metal tag with his name. "Wish you were here, buddy," I whispered. A scraping sound came from the main tunnel. The creature was inside, coming toward me. I could see its shadow on the wall, grotesquely elongated by my dropped flashlight. It occurred to me then what the creature was. Not just a monster from old stories. It was feeding on my guilt, my failures, my fears. The way it used Emily's voice, how it fixated on Rex's collar, it knew exactly what would break me. It was my demons made flesh. The Jersey Devil entered the chamber, having to fold, its wings tight against its body to fit through the narrow passage. Its red eyes found me immediately in the darkness. It let out a low, rumbling sound, almost a purr. "Daddy, why did you leave me?" Emily's voice came from that horse-like mouth, making my skin crawl. "You're not her," I said, voice steadier than I expected. "You're not real." It tilted its head, studying me. "Everyone leaves you. Bobby, Rex left. Emily left. You drive them all away." The words hit harder than any physical blow, because part of me believed them. The creature stepped, closer hooves clicking on stone. I backed away, moving around the chamber, trying to position myself near the exit tunnel. The Jersey Devil followed, stepping right where I needed it to be near the lamp and dynamite. My back hit the wall. Nowhere left to go. "You want to die," it said, no longer using Emily's voice, but something deeper, ancient. "I can feel it. That darkness inside you. The wish to end it all." It wasn't wrong. Since losing Emily, since the divorce, there had been nights I sat with my service pistol, turning it over in my hands, thinking how easy it would be. Maybe I did, I admitted, but not anymore. Something shifted inside me, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. All those failures, all that guilt I'd been drowning in bourbon, none of it defined me. Not completely. The creature sensed the change. It reared back, suddenly uncertain. I lunged forward, purposely knocking into it, sending us both crashing into the mining equipment. The lamp tipped over, fuel spilling toward the dynamite. I didn't wait to see if the flame caught. I sprinted for the side tunnel, Rex's collar still clutched in my fist. Behind me, the Jersey Devil let out a scream of rage. I heard wings unfold, hooves pounding stone as it charged after me. Too late. The flame reached the dynamite. The explosion was deafening in the confined space. The shockwave lifted me off my feet, throwing me deeper into the tunnel. Behind me, the roar of collapsing rock filled the world. Dust choked the air. I landed hard, pain shooting through my leg. Something had broken. I couldn't move. The collapse continued. The whole mine, groaning as support beams snapped like twigs. Rocks rained down around me. I covered my head with my arms, curling into a ball. A final, massive rumble shook the earth, and then silence fell. Thick dust filled the air, making it almost impossible to breathe. I was buried alive, but so was the creature. As the dust slowly settled, I found I could still see a faint glow. The flashlight had somehow survived, though its beam was weak now. Batteries nearly dead. I tried to move but couldn't. My lower body was pinned under fallen rock. No feeling in my legs. That wasn't good. I lay back, coughing as dust filled my lungs. The pain was fading now, replaced by cold numbness spreading upward. I knew what that meant. With my free hand, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the photo I always carried Demily on her 6th birthday, gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera. In my other hand, I still held Rex's collar. Funny thing about dying, it brings clarity. All those regrets, all that guilt I'd been carrying, seemed less important now. What mattered was that I'd stopped this thing from hurting anyone else. Jim was gone, but there were families camping just a few miles from here. Kids like Emily, they'd be safe now. I thought about Emily growing up without me. It hurt, but maybe it was better this way. Better than having a broken father who couldn't stay sober long enough to make her school plays. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I whispered to the photo. "Daddy loves you." My vision darkened at the edges. The flashlight beam grew dimmer, or maybe that was just my eyes failing. As consciousness slipped away, I thought I heard Rex barking in the distance, calling me home. The last thing I saw was the photo of Emily and Rex's collar, clutched in my hands. Then darkness took me. My name is Maria Santos, and what I'm about to tell you happened during the winter of 1974, in the heart of Superior National Forest in Minnesota. Some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, thinking I hear that sound on the wind. But I should start at the beginning. It was February, and we were in the middle of the worst blizzard I'd seen in my 5 years as a forest ranger. The snow wasn't just falling, it was attacking, driving horizontally through the air like white bullets. Between the naked birch trees, the wind had a voice that night, a high-pitched shriek that made my skin crawl as it tore through the branches. Every few minutes, I'd hear the sharp crack of a tree limb giving way under the weight of ice, like distant gunshots in the wilderness. Strangely, despite being completely alone out there, I felt calm. There's something about extreme weather that makes you feel connected to something bigger than yourself. The harsh beauty of winter had a way of making my problems seem small. I was following a set of tracks in the snow when something made me stop. The tracks, definitely from some kind of large predator, just ended, mid-stride, as if the animal had simply disappeared into thin air. I knelt down to examine them closer, my gloved finger tracing the sharp edge where the last print was perfectly formed before nothing, just smooth, untouched snow beyond. Looking up, I noticed the sky had taken on an eerie green glow. The aurora borealis was dancing overhead, which made no sense with the heavy storm clouds. The shifting light cast strange, moving shadows across the snow that seemed to reach toward me like fingers. I tried the CB radio clipped to my belt again, but all I got was static. The storm had cut me off completely. No way to call for backup or report my position. According to the Weather Service, this was shaping up to be the worst blizzard in decades. That's when I saw the deer at the edge of the clearing. It stood perfectly still, staring directly at me with eyes that seemed too knowing, too aware. Our eyes locked for what felt like minutes before it suddenly bolted away, as if chased by something I couldn't see. The wind shifted, bringing with it a strange metallic taste that coated my tongue and made my teeth ache. My stomach clenched in response, and I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the cold. The trail ahead led through a dense grove of pines. As I approached, the branches seemed to form tunnels, dark and claustrophobic. I hesitated before entering. Something about those shadowy passages felt wrong, like they were waiting to swallow me. Suddenly, the air pressure dropped, so rapidly that my inner ears screamed with pain. I gasped, grabbing the trunk of a nearby tree to steady myself. In that moment, as the world seemed to compress around me, I knew something was very wrong in these woods. This wasn't just a blizzard. It felt like something had woken up in the storm, something hungry that had been sleeping for a very long time, and I was walking straight toward it. I should tell you a bit about myself. I'm 35 years old, and before becoming a forest ranger, I was an army medic in Vietnam. I saw things there that no one should ever have to see. So many people I couldn't save, so many faces that still visit me in my dreams. Sometimes I wonder if I came to these woods to heal or to hide. My divorce was still fresh back then. After 12 years of marriage, John and I just couldn't make it work anymore. He said I brought the war home with me, that I was never really there, even when I was sitting right across from him at dinner. Maybe he was right, so I threw myself into this job, hoping the quiet of the forest would drown out the memories. I reached up to my neck, feeling for the St. Christopher medal my father gave me when I was a little girl. I've worn it every day since, and I find myself rubbing it between my fingers whenever I'm scared or unsure. It's smooth from years of worry. The left hand I keep gloved most of the time, even indoors. The burn scars from the medical tent fire still pull tight against my skin when it's cold. 3 men died in that fire. I still remember their names, their faces, their hometowns. I wasn't alone on this rescue mission. Tommy Whitehorse was my partner, an Ojibwe guide who grew up in these woods. Tommy knew stories about this forest. That went back hundreds of years. Stories his grandfather told him. Stories that tourists and even most rangers laugh off as superstition. Tommy wasn't laughing when we set out that morning. My biggest problem has always been trying to save everyone. My ex-husband called it my hero complex. Said I'd run into a burning building to save a stranger, but couldn't see our marriage going up in flames. I can't help it. Something inside me needs to make things right, even when it puts me in danger. 5 winters in these woods had taught me to read the weather, to understand the forest's moods and patterns, but this storm was different, unpredictable, angry. Almost in my pack, I carried a small medical kit with 6 morphine syringes for emergencies. Since the divorce, I'd been counting them obsessively each night, making sure they were all there. A habit I'm not proud of, but one I couldn't seem to break. From the moment we got the call about the missing hikers, this rescue mission felt wrong. Like walking into a trap someone had carefully set just for us. I told Tommy as much that morning. There's something not right about this one, I said as we strapped on our snowshoes. Tommy just nodded, his face serious. Geechee Manitou is restless today. What does that mean? I asked. It means we need to be careful, he replied. It's February, the hunger moon, the time when things that sleep in summer grow desperate. I laughed it off then. I'm not laughing now. As the wind howled louder around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and starving was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. And in these temperatures, in this storm, one mistake is all it would take. The first real sign that something was terribly wrong came when I stumbled upon an abandoned snowmobile. Its engine was still warm to the touch, humming with leftover heat. The keys dangled from the ignition, swinging gently in the wind. Who leaves their only way out of a blizzard behind? I called out, thinking the owner might be nearby. Hello, Forest Service. Is anyone there? My voice fell flat in the air, as if the sound couldn't travel more than a few feet. That's when I noticed the silence. The howling wind that had been my constant companion suddenly stopped, not gradually, but all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. The silence felt physical, pressing against my ears until they hurt. I took a few steps forward, my boots crunching too loudly in the fresh snow. About 20 yards ahead, I froze. There was a small clearing with what looked like a recently abandoned campsite. But what made my blood run cold were the bones. Human bones, arranged in a perfect circle around the remains of a fire that still had embers glowing orange in its center. The long bones had been cracked open, the marrow scooped out. "Tommy," I whispered into my radio. "Tommy, do you copy? I've found something ... disturbing." Only static answered me. The air around me suddenly filled with a horrible smell, rotting meat mixed with the clean scents of pine and fresh snow. I pulled my scarf over my nose, but it did little to block the stench. I turned to leave the clearing when something caught my eye. Hanging from a tree branch at least 20 feet up were Tommy's snowshoes. I recognized the beadwork his daughter had added to the bindings. The leather straps were dark with what could only be blood. My hands shook as I pulled out my medical thermometer, more out of habit than any real need to know the temperature. I stared at it in disbelief. -60 degrees Fahrenheit, that was impossible. Cold, yes, but nowhere near that severe. I shook the thermometer and tried again. Same reading. That's when I heard it. A scream, not human, not animal, echoing through the trees. Then another joined it from a different direction, and another. Soon the forest was filled with these terrible wails that somehow seemed to be working together, creating a sound that made my teeth vibrate. I started running, no real direction in mind, just away from those sounds. My foot caught on something in the snow. I looked down and immediately wished I hadn't. Fingers, human fingers arranged in a line, like breadcrumbs on a trail. Tommy's turquoise ring still glinted on one of them. They pointed toward the frozen lake about half a mile ahead. I should have called for backup then, should have retreated to safety. But those missing hikers were still out there, and now Tommy was in trouble too. The daylight began to fade, though my watch said it was only 2 p.m. A darkness that had nothing to do with the setting sun crept in from between the trees. I swear I saw shadows moving on their own, sliding across the snow without anything to cast them. I'd been patrolling these woods for years. I knew every hill, every valley, every landmark within my sector, but now nothing looked familiar. The lake ahead seemed larger than it should be. The shoreline had changed shape, and across its frozen surface, strange patterns were forming in the ice, cracks that looked almost like writing in a language I couldn't read. As the unnatural darkness grew deeper, I clicked on my flashlight. The beam seemed to be swallowed up after just a few feet, barely cutting through the gloom. And somewhere in that darkness, something was watching me, hunting me. I didn't believe in monsters, not real ones, anyway. But in that moment, with those screams still echoing through the trees and Tommy's severed fingers pointing the way like a macabre invitation, I began to wonder if some of those old stories might be true after all. I forced myself to follow the trail of fingers toward the lake. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was trying to hold me back. The snow had started falling again, but wrong somehow. The flakes seemed to hang in the air too long, swirling in patterns that didn't match the wind. That's when I saw it. A figure emerged from the blizzard about 50 yards ahead of me. At first, I thought it was just a very tall man, but as it came closer, I realized no human could be that tall. It had to be at least 9 feet high, impossibly thin, with skin stretched tight over its bones like gray leather left out in the frost. I ducked behind a tree, pressing my back against the rough bark. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it could hear it. I risked another peek. Its face, God, its face. Sunken eyes that glowed a pale yellow in the darkness. A mouth too wide, filled with teeth like yellowed icicles, and rising from its skull were what looked like deer antlers, but larger, twisted, wrong. "Maria," I nearly screamed. It was Tommy's voice, coming from that thing's mouth. "Maria, I'm hurt. Help me, Maria." The voice was perfect, every inflection, every subtle hint of Tommy's accent. But it wasn't him, couldn't be him. Then it changed tactics. "Medic, we need a medic over here." My blood turned to ice. That was a different voice, Staff Sergeant Miller from my unit in Vietnam, a man who died on my table during a mortar attack. A voice I hadn't heard in years, except in my nightmares. The creature knew. Somehow it knew my past, my fears, my guilt. I tried to steady my breathing, to think clearly. I reached for my medical kit, thinking maybe the morphine would help if I got injured. But when I opened it, all the vials were frozen solid, cracked and useless despite being next to my body heat. The temperature was dropping rapidly around. The creature, I could see its breath, a deep, rattling sound that formed ice crystals in the air with each exhale. It was playing with me, I realized, using the storm to herd me, to disorient me, destroying my resources one by one. It had taken out Tommy first because he knew these woods, knew the old stories, knew how to fight it maybe. I touched my St. Christopher medal for courage, and the creature's head snapped in my direction, those glowing eyes fixing on the silver at my throat. It reached out one long skeletal hand, claws extending toward me even though it was still too far away to touch me. It wanted the medal. No, it feared the medal. I remembered something Tommy had told me once about his people's legends, about creatures that hungered in winter, about silver being one of the few things that could harm them. The wind shifted direction suddenly, blowing toward the creature instead of away from it. My compass went crazy, the needle spinning wildly before pointing directly at the monster. The snow began to fall upward, rising from the ground to swirl around that terrible antlered head. The rules of nature didn't apply around this thing. Reality itself warped in its presence. It began to move toward me with a strange, jerky gait, like it wasn't used to walking on two legs. Each step it took left the snow blackened and dead beneath it. I ran. There was nothing else to do but run. I headed for the lake, remembering something else Tommy had mentioned once about these winter spirits. They were physical enough. Despite their supernatural origins, they had weight, and the ice on the lake was thin this year. The creature followed, its long legs eating up the distance between us with terrifying speed. I could hear it breathing behind me, that deep, rattling sound growing louder as it gained ground. I reached the shore of the lake and kept going, boots sliding on the slick surface. The ice groaned beneath my weight, hairline cracks spreading outward with each step. If it was barely holding me, maybe it wouldn't hold something twice my size. It was a desperate plan, maybe my only chance. I turned to face the monster, standing in the middle of the frozen lake, the ice creaking ominously beneath my feet. The creature stopped at the shore, those yellow eyes watching me with what I could swear was a look of calculation. It knew what I was thinking, and it was smarter than I'd hoped. We faced each other across the ice, me breathing hard, clouds of vapor rising from my mouth, and that thing standing perfectly still on the shore, watching me with those terrible yellow eyes. My fingers and toes had gone numb from the cold. Each movement was becoming harder, clumsier. Frostbite was setting in, and I knew if I didn't find shelter soon, I wouldn't need to worry about the monster. The cold would kill me just as dead. The creature took a step onto the ice. It was testing, seeing if the surface would hold its weight. The ice groaned but didn't break. It took another step, and another, moving with slow confidence now. As it came closer, I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. Images flashed through my mind. Patients I couldn't save in Vietnam, their faces twisted in pain as they died. Under my hands, my ex-husband walking out the door for the last time. Tommy's fingers laid out in the snow. I realized with sudden clarity that these weren't just memories. The creature was somehow feeding these thoughts into my mind, making my failures and regrets feel fresh and overwhelming. It was feeding on my guilt, my fear, my pain, and growing stronger with each step. "Stop," I whispered, my voice sounding small in the vast whiteness around us. "Please stop." The creature tilted its head, antlers swaying with the movement. Then it opened its mouth and spoke with my own voice. "I couldn't save them. I can't save anyone. I'm not strong enough." Hearing my deepest fears spoken aloud broke something inside me, but it also made me angry. This thing was using my pain against me, turning my humanity into a weapon. My hand went to the St. Christopher medal at my neck. I felt the silver, warm under my touch, almost humming with energy. The creature's eyes followed the movement, and I saw something like worry cross its inhuman face. I ripped the medal from my neck, the chain breaking easily. The silver gleamed in my palm, catching what little light remained in the darkening afternoon. "You're wrong," I said, my voice stronger now. "I couldn't save everyone. No one can. But I'm still here. I'm still trying." The creature let out a sound, half roar, half scream, that shook ice from the trees along the shore. It rushed forward, no longer cautious, no longer playing with its food. I stood my ground, waiting until the last possible second, when it was almost on me, claws reaching for my throat. I ducked under its arm and drove my silver medal into its chest with all my strength. The medal sank into its flesh like it was pushing through rotten wood. A sound like breaking glass filled the air, and the creature arched backward, its mouth open in a silent scream. The ice beneath us finally gave way, cracking apart in a spiderweb pattern. We both went into the water. The cold was like 1,000 knives, stabbing every inch of my skin at once. But the creature got the worst of it. As the icy water touched it, its body began to dissolve. There's no other word for it. Like paper melting in acid, it came apart in sheets and chunks, the pieces swirling away in the current beneath the ice. I was able to grab the edge of the hole we'd made and pull myself out, though my waterlogged clothes made it nearly impossible. By the time I dragged myself to shore, I couldn't feel my hands or feet at all. Somehow, I made it to an emergency shelter a mile away. I don't remember much of that walk, just putting one foot in front of the other, over and over, my wet clothes freezing solid against my skin. I found 3 of the missing hikers huddled in that shelter, cold and scared but alive. They said they'd been chased by something they couldn't describe, something that called to them with the voices of people they loved. We found Tommy's body 2 days later when the rescue team finally reached us. He was partially eaten. I'll leave it at that. The official report says it was wolves, or maybe a bear, desperate with winter hunger. The hikers and I know better, but who would believe us? I lost 3 fingers to frostbite, the pinky and ring finger on my left hand, and the index finger on my right. Small price to pay, all things considered. The nightmares are worse. Almost every night, I hear those voices again. Tommy, my patients from Vietnam, even that thing using my own voice against me. That was 15 years ago now. I still work as a ranger, though I transferred to Arizona after that winter. I don't do well in the cold anymore. But every February, during the full moon, that the old tribes called the Hunger Moon, I checked the missing persons reports from Minnesota, from that same region of Superior National Forest. The numbers spike every year, always during the coldest nights, always in the same area where I fought that thing. I tell myself it died in that lake, that I killed it with my father's silver medal. But deep down, I know better. You don't kill something that old, that powerful, that hungry, with one piece of silver and some cold water. You just wound it, make it retreat, make it sleep and heal and wait for another hunger moon, another desperate winter. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear it calling my name, even here, in the desert, 1,000 miles away, calling me back to finish what we started. But that's a story for another day. My name is Helen Morrison. I've been a ranger at Mount Rainier National Park for 12 years now, and I thought I knew these woods like the back of my scarred hand. But what happened that morning in 1959 made me question everything I believed about the natural world. It was just before dawn when I started my patrol. The mist was thick between the old cedar trees, hanging like ghostly curtains. I remember how quiet it was, too quiet. Usually, these woods are full of life, even in the early hours. Squirrels chattering, birds calling to each other as they wake. But that morning, there was nothing but the soft patter of water droplets falling from the moss on the branches. I took a deep breath, trying to enjoy the silence like I normally would. These ancient trees always felt like a cathedral to me, a sacred place where I could find peace. But something felt off. The fog wasn't moving right. I've seen morning mist 1,000 times, how it drifts with the gentle breeze. But this fog swirled upward in tight spirals, like it was being pulled by invisible strings. It moved against the air currents, against nature itself. I tried the field telephone to check in with base camp, but it was dead. The copper wires looked eaten away, corroded to green dust. Those wires were brand new, installed just last month. A movement caught my eye, an elk at the edge of a small clearing. But something was wrong with it. Patches of fur were missing, and when it turned to look at me, its eyes were rolled back, showing only white. It bolted away before I could get closer. The cold was getting to me. Even though summer was around the corner and the sun would be up soon, the temperature felt like deep winter. My breath came out in thick clouds that hung in the air too long. The trail ahead wound between massive boulders the size of houses, creating dark passages where anything could hide. As I walked, a strange pressure built in my head. My teeth ached where I had fillings, and when I glanced at my watch, the hands were moving backward. I should have turned around right then. Should have run back to the ranger station and called for help. But Dr. Pierce was waiting for me further along the trail, and we had work to do. Important work, documenting rare plant species before logging companies could make their case to harvest this section of the park. So I kept walking, deeper into the woods, feeling like I was being watched with every step. The pressure in my head grew worse, and the silence became a physical thing, pressing against my ears. I didn't know it then, but that trail was leading me straight toward something that had no right to exist in our world. Something that was waiting, watching, studying me just as I'd come to study the forest. And by the time I realized the danger, it was already too late to turn back. I never thought of myself as brave, just stubborn, maybe. At 39, I'd seen enough of life to know that nothing comes easy, especially for a woman trying to make it in a man's world. Before becoming a ranger, I worked in a factory during the war. We made airplane parts, dangerous work with hot metal and heavy machines. My best friend Sarah worked the station next to mine. We'd talk about our dreams while our hands did the work. She was going to get married when her fiancé came home from overseas. I was going to... Well, I never quite figured that part out. Then came the accident. A machine malfunctioned, and Sarah was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I still hear the screams sometimes when it's quiet. I couldn't save her. All I got was these burned scars on my hands from trying. That's why I wear gloves most of the time, not just for the cold. After that, I threw myself into work. Never married, never slowed down. When the war ended, I couldn't stand being in the city anymore. The factory felt like a prison of bad memories, so I applied to the Park Service, and here I am. 12 years later, I still wear Sarah's engagement ring. Her fiancé gave it to me at the funeral, said he couldn't bear to look at it. I keep it on my right hand, and I touch it whenever I start to doubt myself, like I was doing now, as I headed to meet Dr. Edward Pierce. Just a routine expedition, I told myself, rubbing the ring with my thumb. Nothing to worry about. Dr. Pierce was a botanist from the university. Smart man, kind eyes behind thick glasses. We'd been working together for 2 weeks, tracking and documenting rare plants that grew only in certain parts of the park. The work mattered to me if we could prove these plants were special enough. Maybe we could save this section of forest from the logging companies. I should have listened to my gut feeling. This trip felt wrong from the start, like something bad was just waiting to happen. But I pushed those thoughts away. I've always been too proud to admit when I'm scared, too stubborn to ask for help. It's my worst fault, facing everything alone. I patted the pocket where I kept my first aid kit. Inside was 6 morphine tablets, left over from a rescue mission last year when a hiker broke his leg. I'd never used them, just kept them, just in case, like a security blanket, I guess. Something about having them made me feel safer, though I never told anyone I had them. The trail ahead was one I could walk blindfolded. After 12 years, I knew every root and rock, could spot animal tracks even in the darkest night. But today, everything looked different somehow, twisted, wrong. As I walked deeper into the woods to our meeting spot, that feeling of dread grew stronger. This forest held secrets, ancient things that maybe humans weren't supposed to know about. Dr. Pierce and his scientific curiosity might have stirred something up, something that had been sleeping for a long, long time. I quickened my pace, hoping I was wrong, hoping I'd find him at our camp, boiling water for coffee, excited to show me some new plant he'd discovered. But deep down, I already knew. Something terrible had happened in these woods, and I was walking straight toward it. I reached our camp, just as the sun should have been rising, but the forest stayed dark and gloomy. What I found made my blood run cold. Our research equipment was destroyed. The metal parts had melted into twisted lumps, like they'd been in a fire hot enough to melt steel. But there were no burn marks on the ground, no ashes, nothing to show how this could have happened. Dr. Pierce, I called out, my voice sounding small in the heavy silence. No answer came back, not even an echo. The forest was completely quiet now. No dripping water, no distant stream, not even the sound of wind in the branches. It was like someone had turned off all the sound in the world. On the table where we kept our notes, I found Dr. Pierce's notebook. The last few pages were filled with frantic writing, the letters shaky and pressed hard into the paper. I could barely make out the words. White shadow following and not natural, and get out written over and over. The air changed suddenly, filling with a sharp smell like right after a lightning strike, mixed with something rotten that made me gag. My nose burned just breathing it in. Near the edge of our camp, hanging from a tree branch 15 feet up, I spotted something that made no sense. Dr. Pierce's glasses, somehow pushed deep into the bark like they'd been shot there. Both lenses were cracked in a spiderweb pattern. The temperature was all wrong too. I pulled out the thermometer from my pack, and it read 120 degrees, but that was impossible. It had been freezing cold just minutes ago, and even now, I didn't feel that kind of heat. I touched the back of my hand to my forehead, checking for fever. Was I imagining things? Then I heard it, a whistling sound from deeper in the forest. Not like a person whistling, but almost like it. A melody that was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl. It rose and fell, calling to something in my brain that wanted to follow it, even as every instinct screamed at me to run the other way. I forced myself to keep searching for Dr. Pierce. That's when I found ... Oh God, I still see it in my nightmares. His hand, just his hand, clutching one of the rare orchids we'd been documenting. The arm was cut off, clean at the elbow, like it had been sliced with a giant razor. There was barely any blood, like the wound had been cauterized by intense heat. The heat was getting worse by the minute. The normal dampness of the rainforest was drying up before my eyes. Moss that should have been soft and green was turning brown and crispy. Puddles from yesterday's rain were steaming away into nothing. I turned around, trying to get my bearings, to find the trail back to safety. But nothing looked right anymore. The landmarks I knew so well were changing. Trees that should have been straight were now twisted into spiral shapes. Rocks seemed to sag like they were melting in the heat. I wasn't just lost. It was like the forest itself was changing the rules, becoming something else entirely. That's when I saw the first glimpse of it, just a flash of something pale moving between the trees. Something that didn't belong here, something that was hunting me. And I realized with sickening clarity that whatever had happened to Dr. Pierce was about to happen to me too. I froze in place, hardly daring to breathe. There it was again, a pale shape gliding between the trees. It moved without making a sound, without disturbing a single leaf on the ground, like a ghost, but somehow worse. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming now. Not just watched, studied, like I was a bug under a microscope, being examined by something curious but completely uncaring whether I lived or died. I caught a better glimpse as it moved closer. People talk about the Yeti or Bigfoot in these mountains, but this was nothing like those stories. This thing was tall and thin, with skin so white it seemed to glow from within. Its skin looked almost see-through, like you could see the shadows of bones underneath. The worst part was its face, smooth, with no eyes that I could see, but somehow I knew it was looking right at me. Helen ... Helen ... A voice called, and my heart jumped because it sounded exactly like Dr. Pierce. Come, see this specimen. Remarkable adaptation ... But it wasn't him. It was the thing, mimicking his voice perfectly, using his words, his scientific terms, trying to lure me closer. I backed away slowly, my hand reaching for my knife. The creature moved forward in sudden bursts, stopping to pick up things I'd touched or passed by. It took a leaf I had brushed against, a strand of my hair caught on a branch. It was ... collecting samples of me. My pocket felt warm. I reached in and found the morphine tablets had melted into goo, the metal case around them soft and warped. The heat was coming from the creature, growing more intense as it got closer. It reached out one long, thin arm, fingers stretching toward me. No, not toward me. Toward Sarah's ring on my right hand. The diamond caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the creature's pale skin. It seemed fascinated, tilting its head like a curious child. My ears popped painfully as it moved closer, like the air pressure was changing. The space around the creature seemed to warp and bend, like reality itself couldn't quite hold its shape. Near this thing, I backed away, looking for escape. The creature was hurting me, I realized. Every time I tried to move toward the trail that would lead back to the ranger station, waves of heat would force me another way. It was creating a trap of heat, leaving me only one direction to go deeper into the unknown parts of the forest. The worst part was how it seemed to know things about me. As it got closer, images flashed in my mind. Sarah's face the moment of the accident, the funeral, the nights I'd spent alone blaming myself. This thing was somehow pulling my memories out, feeding on my guilt and fear. As I retreated, the world around us began to change even more dramatically. Solid rock became soft like clay. Metal objects, my canteen, my belt buckle, turned rubbery and useless. The creature reached out again, and a tree branch between us sagged and dripped like melting wax. I turned and ran then, no longer caring about direction, just needing to put distance between myself and that thing. My boots pounded on the trail as I gasped for breath in the superheated air. Ahead, I spotted a dark opening in the hillside, a lava tube, one of the ancient volcanic caves that honeycomb this part of the mountain. Without thinking twice, I dove inside, hoping the creature wouldn't follow me into the narrow, dark space. As I crawled deeper into the cool darkness, I heard that whistling melody again, closer now, echoing off the stone walls around me. I had escaped for the moment, but I was also trapped, and somehow I knew the creature was patient. It would wait. It had all the time in the world. The cave was cool and damp, such a relief after the burning heat outside. I crawled deeper, my hands finding their way along the rough stone. The lava tube narrowed, then opened into a small chamber where I could finally stand up. My watch had stopped completely now. I had no idea how long I'd been in there, minutes or hours. My throat was dry, lips cracked from the supernatural heat. I'd escaped. I reached for my canteen, only to find it warped and empty. The water evaporated. "Think, Helen," I whispered to myself. "Think." The whistling started again, echoing through the cave entrance. It bounced off the walls until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The creature was outside, waiting. My mind felt foggy from thirst and fear. I touched Sarah's ring, twisting it around my finger. What would she tell me to do now? A pale glow appeared at the cave entrance. Long, thin fingers curled around the edge of the rock. It was coming in after me. In that moment, with my back against the wall and nowhere left to run, I finally understood. This thing, whatever it was, it fed on curiosity and guilt. Dr. Pierce's scientific obsession had drawn it first. Now it was feeding on my guilt about Sarah, about not being able to save her. The creature slipped into the cave, its body bending in ways no human could move. In the confined space, the heat was unbearable. Sweat poured down my face, and my vision blurred. Then something strange happened. The smooth, eyeless face of the creature seemed to ripple, and suddenly I was seeing visions. The factory, the machines, Sarah laughing just moments before the accident. The creature was showing me my worst memory, making me relive it. "No," I shouted, the sound echoing in the small space. "You don't get to use her against me." The creature paused, tilting its head as if surprised by my resistance. In that moment of hesitation, I noticed something. Where the light from Sarah's diamond ring touched the creature's skin, it seemed to disturb it. The translucent flesh rippled and pulled away, like water from hot oil. I remembered something Dr. Pierce had said about diamonds: they're pure carbon, one of the hardest, most stable structures in nature. And this thing, whatever it was, seemed to warp reality, to change the properties of matter. I pulled the ring from my finger and held it out. The creature reached for it, fascinated by its sparkle. As its long fingers almost touched the diamond, I lunged forward and pressed the ring directly against its chest. What happened next is hard to describe. Where the diamond touched, the creature's skin began to break apart. Not like human skin tearing, but like its whole body was losing its shape, unable to hold itself together. A high-pitched sound filled the cave, hurting my ears. The creature thrashed wildly, its body rippling and warping. The heat became intense, unbearable. I felt my own skin blistering, my hair singeing, but I held on, pressing the diamond deeper. The creature's form began to dissolve around the diamond, like ice melting in hot water. But as it dissolved, I felt something happening to me too. My hands, still pressing the diamond forward, began to tingle and then burn with a pain worse than anything I'd felt before. I looked down in horror to see my own fingers becoming transparent, then breaking apart, just like the creature's body. The effect was spreading up my arms. We were somehow connected now, its destruction linked to mine. "Sarah," I whispered, as the pain overtook me. "I'm sorry." The diamond fell from my dissolving hands, clattering to the stone floor between me and what remained of the creature. The world around me shimmered and faded, reality bending one last time. My last thought was that at least I'd stopped it. Whatever this thing was, wherever it came from, it wouldn't hurt anyone else. Dr. Pierce could rest now, and maybe, finally, so could I. My name is Marcus Freeman, and I've seen things in the Okefenokee that no man should ever have to witness. Let me tell you about that night back in '65, when the swamp showed me its true face. The air was so thick with humidity I could barely breathe as I paddled my boat through the black water. All around me, Spanish moss hung from the cypress trees like old, forgotten ghosts. It was quiet out there, too quiet. Just the occasional grunt of an alligator, a night bird's lonely call, and the gentle splash of water against the cypress knees. Something felt different about the swamp that night. I'd been working these waterways for years, but this time I felt strangely connected to this ancient place, like it was speaking to me in a language I almost understood. The first thing that bothered me was the silence. Usually, the frogs make such a racket you can hardly hear yourself think. But that night, nothing. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. The water glowed in eerie green from some kind of algae. It wasn't the normal gentle shimmer I was used to. This was bright, almost like someone had poured chemicals into the swamp. It lit up the narrow channels I was following, making everything look alien and wrong. I tried using my radio to check in with Bass, but all I got was static. I was completely alone out there, at least 40 miles from any kind of civilization, surrounded by nothing but water and wilderness. As I rounded a bend, I spotted a great blue heron standing perfectly still on a log. Now, I've seen thousands of herons in my time, but this one watched me pass with eyes that seemed to knowing. It turned its head to follow my movements, almost like it was studying me. The water felt strange too, hot as bath water, despite the cool October evening. It steamed slightly in the night air, creating wisps of fog that drifted between the trees. The channels kept getting narrower, winding through thorny brambles and thick vegetation. It felt like the swamp was closing in around me, creating tight passages that barely let my boat through. I had to duck under low-hanging branches that seemed to reach for me as I passed. My ears started to pop, and my head began to throb. The air pressure was dropping fast. Storm coming, maybe, but there was something else too. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. A feeling of being watched, of something waiting just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I've spent my life on the water, faced down hurricanes and rogue waves, but nothing had ever made me feel as uneasy as the Okefenokee did that night. If I'd known what was waiting for me deeper in the swamp, I would have turned around right then and there, but I didn't, and that's why I'm telling you this story now. I guess I should tell you a bit about myself. I'm 44 years old, and before I became a park ranger, I was in the Merchant Marines. That life ended after a terrible storm sank our ship. I was the only one who made it out alive. Sometimes I still wake up hearing my crewmates calling for help. After the shipwreck, I couldn't face the open ocean anymore. Too many ghosts out there. Then, 8 months ago, I lost my wife, Sarah, to cancer. Our little house feels so empty now that she's gone. That's why I take as many night patrols in the swamp as I can. Being alone in nature hurts less than being alone at home. I carry Sarah's locket with me everywhere. It has a small photo of us on our wedding day. Sometimes, when the loneliness gets too much, I open it just to see her smile. I was doing that a lot on this particular night. If you look at my arms, you'll see some nasty scars from rope burns. Got those trying to pull men from the water during the shipwreck. My left leg isn't quite right either. Gives me trouble when it rains. The swamp's dampness makes it ache something fierce. I wasn't supposed to be alone out there that night. I was working with Dr. Susan Walsh, a marine biologist studying changes in the swamp. Smart lady, knew more about the plants and animals in these waters than anyone I'd ever met. Folks who know me say I have a problem. I can't stop myself from trying to save people, even when it puts me in danger. Got me in trouble more than once. Maybe it's because I couldn't save my crew. Maybe I'm just wired that way. After 8 years working these waters, I know the Okefenokee like the back of my hand. Every hidden channel, every dangerous spot, every safe island where you can rest for the night. At least, I thought I did. I took a small sip from my hip flask. Just medicinal whiskey, you understand. Old swamp rangers say it keeps away the fever that sometimes hits people who spend too much time in these waters. Burns going down, but it calms the nerves. From the moment we started this research trip, things felt off. Equipment breaking for no reason. Strange noises at night. Even the weather seemed to turn against us. Like sailing into the perfect storm, my captain would have said. As I paddled deeper into the swamp that night, I couldn't shake a feeling that had been growing in me for days. The Okefenokee is an ancient place, older than anyone can say, and sometimes, in the quiet moments, it feels like it's watching you, thinking thoughts too old and deep for people to understand, thoughts that aren't friendly to those who don't belong here. I should have listened to that feeling. Should have turned the boat around and headed back to dry land. But I didn't know then what I know now. And by the time I figured it out, it was already too late. I knew something was very wrong when I turned into the channel where Dr. Walsh had set up her research station. Her boat was flipped over, floating, upside down among the water plants. All her equipment, expensive cameras, sample containers, notebooks were scattered across the water. Then I noticed the silence. It hit me like a physical thing. Not even the alligators were making sounds anymore. The swamp had gone completely quiet, like everything living was holding its breath. I managed to fish out some of Dr. Walsh's notes. The pages were wet, but I could still read parts of what she'd written. The last entry mentioned something about an aggressive organism in the black water. She'd underlined those words 3 times. The smell hit me next, like rotten eggs mixed with something worse. Methane bubbles often rise from the swamp bottom, but this was stronger, with another scent underneath that reminded me of death. My heart nearly stopped when I found Susan's field hat caught on a cypress branch. There were strands of her blonde hair still tangled in it. She never went anywhere without that hat set. It was her lucky charm. I checked the water temperature with my thermometer. The reading made no sense. 140 degrees in the deepest part of the channel. That's almost hot enough to boil. No swamp should ever be that hot, especially not in October. Then I heard a deep roaring sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It vibrated through the water and up through my boat, making my teeth rattle. I've heard alligators bellow, bears roar, and freight trains rumble by. This was like all of those sounds mixed together, but bigger. What I found next nearly made me turn tail and run. Floating in a patch of weeds was a boot Susan size 8 hiking boot, and inside, God help me, inside were foot bones, picked clean like the flesh had been melted away. I got sick over the side of my boat right then, and there, the swamp was playing tricks on me too. The glowing algae seemed to form pathways in the water, leading off in different directions. Channels I'd traveled 100 times suddenly looked unfamiliar, as if the landmarks had shifted. I tried to head back the way I came, following a channel I knew led to higher ground. But after 10 minutes of paddling, I hit a dead-end wall, a vegetation that couldn't possibly have grown there overnight, but somehow had. I checked my compass. The needle spun wildly, refusing to point north. My map suddenly seemed useless. The swamp I thought I knew so well had become a stranger to me. Think, Marcus, I told myself. Think clearly. But it was getting harder by the minute. The air felt too thick to breathe properly. The water seemed to be getting hotter, and always, at the edge of my hearing, was that strange rumbling sound. I knew I needed to find Susan, if she was still alive. I needed to get help, but more than anything, I needed to get out of this part of the swamp, because with every passing minute, I became more certain of one thing: something was in the water. With me, something big, something hungry, and it knew I was there. I was checking my useless map when I saw it, a massive shape moving under the water. It was long, like a snake, but much bigger around than any snake had a right to be. It didn't break. The surface just pushed the water up in a wave as it passed right next to my boat. My hands started shaking. In all my years in these swamps, I'd never seen anything like that. The largest alligators don't move that way. This was something else. For the first time since my shipwreck, I felt it again, that cold certainty of being hunted. Whatever was in the water wasn't just passing by. It was circling me, watching me, measuring me. Old-timers around these parts sometimes talk about the Ultima dragon-like creature that lives in Georgia's waters. I'd always laughed at those stories. I wasn't laughing now. The thing in the water could spit or spray something that sizzled when it hit the wood of my boat. Where the drops landed, the paint bubbled and peeled away. Acid, or something like it. Marcus, help me. I'm over here. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Susan's voice, clear as day, coming from a channel to my right. I turned the boat and started paddling fast. Marcus, please. This time her voice came from behind me. I stopped, confused. Then I heard her call again from a completely different direction. That's when I knew. This thing, whatever it was, could mimic voices. It was trying to lure me deeper into the swamp, away from any chance of escape. I reached for my hip flask, for courage, but when I opened it, the whiskey inside had turned dark brown and smelled like battery acid. When I tipped the flask, the liquid burned through a fallen leaf in my boat. The monster seemed interested in Sarah's locket. Every time I touched it, the water around my boat would churn. Maybe it was attracted to the silver, or maybe it sensed how important the locket was to me. A jolt of pain shot up my arm when I dipped my paddle in the water. It felt like touching an electric fence. My outboard motor sputtered and died after another shock hit it. Now I had only my paddle to move the heavy boat. The channels kept changing. Paths that were open one minute were blocked by thick plants the next. It was like the swamp itself was working with the creature, trying to keep me trapped. The water was so hot now, it was steaming. Touching it raised blisters on my skin. If I fell in, I'd be boiled alive in minutes. I knew I couldn't outrun this thing. It knew the swamp better than I did. It was faster, stronger. My only hope was to find some kind of high ground and make a stand. Through the trees, I spotted a small island, what we call a hammock in these parts. Not much, just a bit of solid ground rising a few feet above the water. But it was my only chance. I paddled toward it with everything I had left. Behind me, something huge rose partway out of the water. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see it. I just kept my eyes on that little island and prayed I'd reach it before the monster reached me. I dragged myself onto the small island, my clothes soaked and steaming. It wasn't much of a safe haven, just a hump of mud and roots rising a few feet above the black water. But it was all I had. The ground under my feet didn't feel solid. It squelched and shifted with every step, more like thick mud than proper earth. In places, my boots sank ankle deep. This wasn't good. The island was waterlogged, barely holding together. The heat was getting to me bad. My head pounded, my vision blurred, and my mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. I'd lost my canteen somewhere along the way, and there wasn't a drop of clean water anywhere. As I stumbled around looking for higher ground, I realized something terrible. Every bad memory from the shipwreck was suddenly fresh in my mind. The screams of my crewmates, the cold water filling my lungs, the faces of the men I couldn't save. It all played in my head like a movie I couldn't turn off. That's when I understood what was happening. This thing in the swamp pit wasn't just hunting me, it was feeding on me. Not on my body, but on my guilt, my pain, my regret. All those feelings I'd carried since the shipwreck were like a beacon drawing it to me. The water around the island began to bubble and churn. Steam rose in thick clouds, making it hard to see more than a few feet. Through the mist, I caught glimpses of something massive circling the island along, serpentine shape with ridges along its back. "You left them to die," a voice whispered from the fog. It sounded like my captain. "You could have saved us." "No," I said, pressing my hands over my ears. "I tried. I did everything I could." "You let her die alone," said another voice. You weren't even there at the end." I fell to my knees in the mud. The voices were right. I had failed them all. Maybe I deserved whatever was coming. My hand brushed against Sarah's locket, still hanging around my neck. I clutched it tight, feeling the familiar shape of it in my palm. And suddenly, I remembered something important. The creature reacted whenever I touched the locket. It was made of silver, and silver conducts electricity. The monster was generating electrical shocks through the water. But maybe, just maybe, I could use that against it. I pulled the locket from my neck, unwinding the long silver chain. If I could somehow get the creature to shock the water while the chain was in contact with it. The island was sinking faster. Now, muddy water covering my feet and rising toward my knees. I didn't have much time. "Hey," I shouted at the water. "You want this? Come and get it." I dangled the locket over the water's edge. The chain was long enough to reach the surface while I kept my hand on dry land. The effect was immediate. The water churned violently as the creature surged toward the shiny object. I saw teeth rows and rows of them as a massive head broke the surface. Just as the monster lunged for the locket, I dropped the silver chain into the water. The creature's body lit up with its own electrical charge, but this time, the silver conducted that energy back into the monster itself. A blinding flash lit up the swamp. The boom that followed was like thunder right on top of me. The shock knocked me backward, and for a moment, everything went dark. When I came to, the water around the island was still. No movement, no monster. Just the soft lapping of waves against the muddy shore. My hand fumbled for my radio. Surprisingly, still clipped to my belt. By some miracle, it crackled to life. "Mayday," I croaked into the receiver. "Ranger Freeman, Okefenoke South Quadrant. Dr. Walsh, ... Find Dr. Walsh." That's the last thing I remember before everything went black again. They tell me the Coast Guard found me half dead on that sinking island. They found Susan too, on another hammock 5 miles away. She was alive, but couldn't remember anything that happened after her boat capsized. The doctors said I had severe heat exhaustion, electrical burns, and was delirious from dehydration. They said the monster I described was just a hallucination brought on by swamp gases and trauma. Maybe they're right. Maybe there was no creature, but the rescue team couldn't explain why their equipment failed in that part of the swamp. Compasses spinning wildly, radios dead, engines stalling. They couldn't explain the unnaturally hot water or the acid burns on my boat, and they definitely couldn't explain why. To this day, local fishermen swear they see a man in a ranger uniform guiding lost boats to safety during bad storms, a man who vanishes when they try to thank him. I don't go into the deep swamp anymore, but sometimes, on stormy nights, I feel a pull toward the Okefenokee, like it's calling me back, like something out there is waiting for me to return. And sometimes, when the wind is right, I hear voices in the rain calling my name. My name is Daniel Knox. I've been a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains for 6 years now, and I've never seen the forest act this strange before. It was a cool autumn day in 1982, the kind where golden leaves make a crunchy carpet between the old oak trees, and fog rolls through the valleys like spilled milk. Usually, I love these quiet patrols. Just me, the mountains, and the gentle sounds of nature. But today felt different. I stopped on the trail to take a deep breath. The mountain air usually clears my lungs and calms my mind, but something was off. The birds were flying in circles, confused, like not heading south in neat V-shapes, like they should this time of year. A group of deer stood frozen near the path, staring at nothing with blank eyes. They didn't even run when I got close. "Hello, base, this is Knox checking in," I said into my walkie-talkie. Nothing came back but static. That was odd. Reception was usually decent on this side of the mountain. As the sun started to set, the mist began rising from the valley, but it didn't spread out like normal fog. It twisted upward in perfect spirals, like ghostly fingers reaching for the sky. There wasn't any wind, but the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. My ears kept popping like I was driving up a steep mountain, except I was already at the top. I pulled my jacket tighter and switched on my flashlight. Ahead of me, the trail split around some massive boulders, creating dark passages that seemed to swallow the light. I'd walked this path dozens of times before, but tonight those shadows looked deeper, hungrier somehow. That's when a black bear crossed the trail right in front of me, way too close for comfort. My heart nearly stopped. The bear moved slowly, dragging its feet. I could see patches where its fur was missing, and when it turned to look at me, its eyes were clouded over white, like it was blind, but it seemed to see me just fine. As I stood there, frozen, the feeling hit me hard. Something was very wrong on my mountain tonight, and I was all alone out here, with only the strange mist and those shadow-filled passages ahead of me. I should probably tell you a bit about myself. I'm 36 years old, and before I became a ranger, I worked in the coal mines like my daddy and his daddy before him. Most folks around here did. Mining's in our blood, but so is the coal dust. My doctor calls it black lung disease. Some days I can't stop coughing, even with the clean mountain air. But that's not why I left the mines. 6 years ago, there was a collapse. Me and my 3 brothers were deep underground when the walls started shaking. I made it out. They didn't. Some nights I still wake up feeling the walls closing in, wondering if I could have saved them if I'd been faster, braver. After that, I couldn't go back underground. I needed the open sky above me, so I became a ranger instead. But I still carry my old miner's headlamp. It's beat up and scratched, but I keep it with me always. When the panic hits and I feel like I can't breathe, I switch it on. The steady beam helps me remember that I'm not trapped anymore. Today, I was supposed to meet Dr. Amanda Foster, a geologist from the university. Smart lady. She's been setting up equipment all over the mountain, studying some unusual earthquake activity. Nothing major, just little tremors that don't make sense given the mountain's age and structure. These mountains should be stable, she told me last week. They're ancient, but something's making them restless. I checked my watch. She was late, not like her at all. I pulled my inhaler from my pocket and took a puff. The medicine helped open my lungs, but I was using it more than usual today. Something about this place made my chest feel tight. As I waited for Dr. Foster, I couldn't shake this feeling of dread creeping up my spine. It was the same feeling I had right before the mine collapsed, like something terrible was about to happen. My ranger buddies always joke about my miner's intuition, how I can sense danger before it shows itself. Right now, that intuition was screaming at me to turn around and leave this mountain, but I couldn't. Not with Dr. Foster still out here, somewhere. Besides, I've always had this problem. When something scares me, I can't help but move toward it, like a moth drawn to a flame. My oldest brother used to say it would be the death of me someday. I took one more look at the darkening sky. The stars were coming out, and I could usually navigate by them as well as any compass. But tonight, they seemed to be in all the wrong places. With a deep breath that ended in a small cough, I headed up the trail to find Dr. Foster and her equipment. I found Dr. Foster's equipment about a mile up the trail, or what was left of it. Her fancy seismic machines, the ones that measure earthquakes, were crushed flat like someone had stepped on a soda can. The metal was all twisted and squeezed together. This wasn't from a falling tree or a curious bear. It was like something had pressed down with incredible force. "Dr. Foster," I called out. My voice echoed back at me, but nothing else made a sound. No birds, no insects, not even the wind in the trees. The forest was dead quiet, and that's never a good sign. On the ground next to the broken machines, I spotted her notebook. The pages were filled with numbers, charts, and words like gravitational anomalies. One sentence was underlined 3 times. "Something is pulling from inside the mountain." I licked my dry lips and tasted something strange, like metal mixed with coal dust. The familiar taste brought back memories of the mine, of being trapped, of choosing which brother to try to save first. My heart started racing. I reached for my inhaler again, but my hands were shaking too much. That's when I noticed something, yellow, a few feet away. It was Dr. Foster's hard hat. I picked it up and felt my stomach drop. The plastic was cracked right down the middle, like an egg. The safety light on top was still blinking weakly. I took out my altimeter, a tool that shows how high up you are. According to it, I was 200 feet below sea level. That was impossible. We were on a mountain, thousands of feet above the ocean. The ground under my feet started to vibrate. At first, I thought it was another small earthquake, but it kept building. A deep rumbling came from inside the mountain itself, like a giant beast was waking up. I followed the sound around a bend in the trail and stopped cold. There, against a rocky wall, was an arm. Just an arm, sticking out from the solid stone, like the rock had melted around it. The hand was still clutching a small stone sample. The sleeve on the jacket was blue, the same color Dr. Foster had been wearing. I stumbled backward, my lungs squeezing tight. As I turned to run, I noticed something even stranger. The trail that had always gone downhill now curved upward, making a complete circle. I looked behind me, and the path that should lead back to my truck also went uphill. Both trails went up, none went down. That's not how mountains work. Walking became harder with each step. Sometimes I felt light as a feather, like I might float away. Other times, it felt like I was carrying 3 men on my back. My weight kept changing, making me stumble. I knew these trails like the back of my hand, but now nothing looked right. Familiar landmarks were in the wrong places. Paths ended in solid rock walls that I knew hadn't been there before. I was lost on my own mountain, and the sun had completely set. Night had fallen, and with it came a darkness deeper than any cave I'd ever entered. I had just steadied myself against a tree when I saw it, a shadow moving through the solid rock face in front of me. Not on the rock, but through it, like the stone had turned to water. The shadow was shaped like a person, but not quite right. It seemed to pull itself from the mountain, stretching and bending in ways no human could. My whole body felt heavy, like being deep underground with all that weight pressing down. It was getting harder to breathe. "Daniel," a voice called from behind a cluster of boulders. It sounded exactly like Dr. Foster. "Daniel, I need your help. I'm stuck." I took a step toward her voice, then stopped. Something wasn't right. "Daniel," another voice, this time my youngest brother's. "Help us, Danny, we're trapped again." My heart nearly stopped. That voice had been silent for 6 years, buried under tons of rock and coal. "No," I whispered, "you're not real." The pressure around me increased, and I fell to my knees. When I looked up, I saw it clearly for the first time. People around these mountains have stories about the Poplik monster, half man, half goat. I always thought they were just old tales to scare kids away from dangerous places. But what stood before me had the upper body of a man and the powerful legs of a goat, ending in split hooves that somehow made no sound on the rocky ground. Its eyes glowed white, just like the bear's had. It tilted its head, studying me, and suddenly the vertical rock wall behind it became a horizontal floor. The creature walked on it like it was perfectly normal, defying everything I knew about gravity. I reached for my inhaler, desperate to breathe, but as I pulled it from my pocket, it crumpled in my hand like it was made of paper. The medicine inside turned to dust that blew away in a wind I couldn't feel. The creature's gaze fixed on the miner's headlamp hanging from my belt. It made a sound, not quite a bleat, not quite a word, and took a step toward me. I stumbled back, and the ground shifted beneath me. What had been solid dirt became a steep slope, and I started sliding toward the monster. I grabbed at roots and rocks to stop myself, but they came loose in my hands. The monster stomped one hoof against the stone, and the sound echoed impossibly, seeming to come from inside the solid rock all around me. Water from a nearby stream suddenly flowed uphill, circling around the creature's legs. Loose rocks didn't fall down but sideways, shooting past my head like bullets. The world had stopped making sense. The voices came again. Dr. Foster, all three of my brothers, even my parents, all calling from different directions at once, begging for help. The monster's mouth didn't move, but I knew it was creating these sounds, pulling my worst memories from my mind and using them against me. I clutched my miner's lamp, my fingers finding the switch. When I turned it on, the creature hissed and retreated slightly from the beam. The light seemed to disrupt whatever power it had, creating a small bubble of normal gravity around me. With a desperate lunge, I made it to a narrow opening in the rocks. The entrance to a cave system I knew ran deep into the mountain. Monster followed, its hooves clicking on stone as everything continued to twist and bend around it. I ran deeper into the darkness, my headlamp cutting a thin path forward, with the creature's angry breathing close behind me. I stumbled deeper into the cave, my headlamp beam bouncing wildly off the wet walls. In here, things got even worse. The floor kept switching with the ceiling. 1 second I was running, the next I was falling. Then suddenly I was crawling on what used to be the wall. My body felt heavy, then light, then heavy again. It was like being in a nightmare where nothing stays still. My lungs burned with each breath. The black lung disease that normally just made me cough was now squeezing my chest like a vice. I couldn't get enough air. The monster was still behind me. I could hear it moving through the stone, sometimes above, sometimes below. Its white eyes would appear through solid rock, watching me, studying me. The voices of my dead brothers kept calling, each one bringing back the memory of the day I lost them. Danny, why'd you leave us down there? You could have saved us if you'd been braver. Why are you still alive when we're gone? I knew it wasn't really them. It was the monster using my guilt against me. But knowing that didn't make the pain any less real. I reached a large chamber deep in the mountain and collapsed against a boulder. There was nowhere left to run. The creature entered slowly, seeming to enjoy my fear. As it came closer, I relived that terrible day in the mine, the rumbling, the collapse, the choice of which brother to try to pull free first, knowing I couldn't save them all. That's when I realized something. This monster fed on fear. It was using my worst memory, my greatest shame, to paralyze me. My claustrophobia, my guilt, these were its weapons. You're not real, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. You're just fear, and I've been afraid long enough. The creature snarled, and the cave began to shake. Rocks fell from above, some dropping normally, others sliding along the walls or hanging in mid-air. I couldn't tell which way was up anymore. But instead of panicking, I focused on my breathing, just like my doctor had taught me. I gripped my miner's headlamp tightly. All these years, it had been my comfort, my connection to my brothers. Now it would be my weapon. As the monster approached, I pointed the beam directly into its glowing eyes. The light seemed to hurt it, making it shriek and back away. The sound was terrible, like metal grinding on stone. Where the light touched, the creature's power weakened. Gravity started working normally again in that small space. I advanced, keeping the beam steady despite my shaking hands. The monster retreated, but its anger made the entire mountain tremble. Cracks appeared in the walls around us. Water began to pour in from somewhere above. Then I heard real voices, human voices from outside the cave. A hiking group had stopped to camp in the valley below. They had no idea what danger they were in. The monster heard them too. It turned toward the sound, hungry for new fear. I knew what I had to do. "Hey," I shouted, getting its attention. "You want fear? I've got plenty right here." I cranked my headlamp to its brightest setting and charged forward, aiming the beam at the creature's eyes. It screamed and lashed out, making the mountain shake even harder. The cave ceiling began to crack above us. I kept pushing forward, forcing the monster deeper into the mountain, away from the hikers. The walls were coming down around us now. Massive chunks of rock fell from above. The ground buckled beneath my feet. The monster's power went wild. Gravity pulled in every direction at once. I was lifted off my feet, slammed against walls, stretched and compressed like I was made of rubber. But I kept my light aimed at the creature, even as I felt my ribs crack under the pressure. With one final, desperate effort, I lunged forward and pressed my headlamp directly against the monster's chest. The light seemed to burn into it like fire. It let out a shriek that shook the entire mountain. The cave-in started then. Not a normal collapse, but something much worse. It was like the mountain itself was folding inward, collapsing into the space the monster had somehow created. I was caught in the middle of it all. As tons of rock came down around us, I had one last thought of my brothers. "I'm coming," I whispered. Then darkness. 3 days later, rescue teams found a massive pile of rubble where part of the mountain had collapsed. The hiking group from the valley reported hearing a man's voice warning them to run just before the collapse, giving them time to escape. The only thing they recovered from the site was my miner's headlamp, somehow still working, the beam shining steadily through a tiny gap in the rocks. They never found my body. But people say that on dark nights, lost hikers sometimes see a miner's light moving through these mountains, guiding them to safety. And local miners swear they can hear my voice, warning them away from dangerous shafts before they collapse. The official report called it a geological anomaly, an unstable rock formation that finally gave way. The area was declared off-limits, marked with warning signs that most locals won't go near. They know better. They know that something was in that mountain. Something that's still there, buried deep, hopefully forever. And they know that whatever it is, I'm still here too, keeping watch, making sure it never escapes. Some say I died a hero that night. Others say I'm just another ghost story in these ancient hills. All I know is that I finally made a choice. I can live with or die with, I suppose. Either way, I'm not afraid anymore. My name is Daniel Reeves. Everyone calls me Danny. I've been a park ranger for 12 years now, and I've seen just about everything these woods can throw at a man. Or so I thought. It's October 13th, 1974. My watch says 3:47 in the morning, though time doesn't seem to work right in this place. The air is cold, dropped 20 degrees in just minutes. Strange fog rolls through the valley like ghostly fingers reaching for something. Something like me, maybe. I'm in Bone Hollow, deep in the wilderness of West Virginia. A place so far from anywhere that it might as well be on the moon. 47 miles to the nearest town. No roads in or out except old mining trails that nobody remembers anymore. My radio's been dead since I entered the valley yesterday. Just static, and sometimes I think I hear children laughing in the static. Rex, my old bloodhound, walks beside me. He's 11 now, grey around the muzzle, but still the best tracker in the service. He's been my only real friend since the divorce, since Emma. My hand slides into my jacket pocket, fingers wrapping around the small wooden horse. Thunder, she called it. Emma's favorite toy. She was only 8 when the leukemia took her, 6 months ago. Some days I can barely remember her face. Other days, like today, the pain is so fresh I can hardly breathe. I'm here because the Morrison family disappeared 3 days ago. Mom, Dad, and twin girls. 8 years old, just like Emma was. The thought twists something inside me. 47 lives saved in my career, and the one that mattered most slipped through my fingers while I was saving someone else's kid. The trees here aren't right. They twist like people frozen in pain, their bark scratched up like something tried to claw its way out from inside. No birds sing in Bone Hollow. Nothing makes a sound except the occasional whisper of wind. My boss didn't want me taking this assignment. Said I wasn't ready, that I was still too raw from Emma. He's right, of course, but nobody else would come. The locals won't set foot in Bone Hollow. Not since the mining disaster back in the 1890s. 23 children died when the shaft collapsed. People say their spirits never left. Rex stops suddenly, hackles rising. He whimpers, something he never does on a search. The fog swirls thicker around us, and I catch a smell like wet earth and something rotting underneath. The air tastes metallic, like old pennies, like blood. Ahead, through the mist, I spot a patch of wildflowers, perfect circles of them, beautiful colors even this late in the year. Something about them sends a chill down my spine. I pull out my compass to check our heading. The needle spins wildly, then stops, pointing deeper into the hollow. Not north, not south, just ... inward, toward whatever waits at the center of this place. Come on, Rex, I whisper, my voice sounding wrong in the silence. Let's find these people and get out of here. But part of me, the part that's been broken since I watched my little girl take her last breath, wonders if I really want to make it back at all. Only Rex and my duty to find that family keep me moving forward. Into Bone Hollow, where the darkness feels alive, and something ancient is waiting for us. The Morrison campsite appears through the fog like a picture from a bad dream. Everything's in its place, tents still standing, camping chairs circled around a fire pit, a pot hanging above it. The weird part, the fire's still burning, 3 days after they disappeared. Hello, I call out. My voice doesn't echo. It's like the air swallows the sound. Rex pulls at his leash, whining. He's never acted like this before. His fur stands straight up, and when I try to get him to pick up a scent, he just backs away. This is a dog who once tracked a lost hiker through a thunderstorm. Now he's scared to move forward. What is it, boy? I kneel beside him, but he won't look at me. He's staring at the biggest tent, the one where the parents would sleep. I take out my flashlight and approach slowly. The zipper on the tent door is open a few inches. I pull it the rest of the way and shine my light inside. My stomach turns. Instead of sleeping bags and personal items, the tent floor is covered with bones, small white bones arranged in a perfect circle. Not fresh, they look old, like they've been here for years. But that's impossible. The Morrison family checked in at the ranger station just 3 days ago. I back away, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. That's when I notice something on the ground near my foot. A piece of paper, folded up. I pick it up and nearly drop it when I unfold it. It's a drawing, crayon on construction paper. A stick, figure family, mom, dad, little girl, and a dog. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, to Daddy, love, Emma. My hands start shaking. This is Emma's drawing, one she made for me before she got sick. But how is it here? I never brought it with me. It should be in a box in my apartment, with all her things I couldn't bear to look at anymore. Emma, the name slips out before I can stop it. And then, from somewhere in the darkness beyond the campsite, I hear her voice. Daddy, come play with us. Rex barks once, sharply, then starts trembling against my leg. Emma, I call again, louder this time. Emma, where are you? Her voice comes again, but from a different direction, then another, and another. All around us, my daughter's voice calling from the trees. Daddy, come play with us. I pull out my watch. The hands are moving backward. I look up at the sky, but can't see the moon or stars through the fog. How long have I been here? It feels like hours, but the sky isn't getting any lighter. I need to keep moving. Find the Morrison family. That's why I'm here. But as I gather my gear, I notice something nailed to a nearby tree. I walk closer, not believing what I'm seeing. It's a park ranger badge, my badge, with my name and the date, 1974. But that's wrong. I was born in 1936. I'd be 38 now. The badge is right, but it's also impossible. Something moves between the trees. Shadows, small ones, like children. I hear them singing, soft nursery rhymes that don't sound quite right. The words are backward, or maybe the melody is wrong. I can't tell. We need to go, Rex, I whisper, fighting the urge to run. We need to find the girls. As we leave the campsite, I feel eyes watching from every direction. I tell myself it's just nerves, just my mind playing tricks after seeing Emma's drawing. But deep down, I know that's not true. Something is in Bone Hollow with us. Something that knows about Emma. Something that's been waiting for me. And we're walking straight toward it. I've been walking for hours, but something isn't right. The sun should be up by now. Instead, the darkness hangs on, thick and heavy like a wet blanket. My flashlight beam seems to get swallowed up just a few feet ahead. This way, I tell Rex, though I'm not sure which way is which anymore. The trails keep changing. I'll follow what looks like a clear path, only to find it leading to places I've already been. Or worse, to places that shouldn't exist at all. Like the clearing I stumble into now. I stop in my tracks, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. Trees surround the open space, but these aren't like the twisted ones from before. These have things growing from their branches. Round, white things. I step closer, my boots crunching on something that doesn't sound like leaves or twigs. I point my flashlight down. Tiny bones carpet the ground, and on the trees, skulls. Human skulls, growing from the branches like apples. Some small, like children's, others larger, all of them with their eye sockets pointed toward me. This isn't real, I whisper to myself. This can't be real. Rex tugs hard on his leash, pulling me away from the bone garden. For once, I'm happy to follow his lead. As we hurry away, I spot something leaning against a tree trunk. A camera, an old Polaroid, just like the one Emma and I used to take camping. Next to it, spread out on the ground, are photos. I pick one up with trembling fingers. It's me sleeping in my tent, but the angle is impossible, like someone was standing over me, or maybe hanging from the ceiling of the tent. I never set up a tent. I haven't slept since I entered Bone Hollow. The next photo shows me from behind, walking with Rex. It was taken just hours ago, but I never saw anyone following us. The last photo makes my blood freeze. It's Emma, sitting on a hospital bed, her last day. But I'm not in the picture. Instead, there's a tall, thin shadow standing beside her. A shadow with arms too long and fingers like twigs. I drop the photos and back away. My heel catches on something, and I fall hard. The wind knocked out of me. When I roll over to see what tripped me, I find myself face to face with a small wooden sign, half buried in the dirt. Bone Hollow Mine, -1892, the mine where those children died. I've wandered right to it, without realizing. The entrance is a dark hole in the hillside. The old support beams rotting and sagging. The smell coming from inside is awful, like meat left too long in the sun. Rex whimpers, then sits down hard, refusing to move closer to the mine. I don't blame him. We'll go around, I tell him, patting his head. We don't need to go in. There. But as I turn to leave, I hear it again. Emma's voice, coming from inside the mine. Daddy, why did you let me die alone? My heart feels like it's being squeezed in a fist. I didn't, Emma. I tried to get there. I tried. Rex suddenly stands at attention, his ears perked up. Then he does something that makes my skin crawl. He opens his mouth and speaks. Daddy, why won't you come home to us? It's Emma's voice, coming from my dog's mouth. Perfect, exactly as I remember it. We miss you so much. I stumble backward, falling again. This isn't happening. It can't be happening. Rex, or whatever, is pretending to be Rex. Tilts his head. Don't you love me anymore, Daddy? I close my eyes tight, pressing my hands over my ears. You're not real, I say, through gritted teeth. None of this is real. When I open my eyes, Rex is normal again, watching me with concerned dog eyes. But the damage is done. I can't trust what I see anymore. I can't even trust my best friend. As we move away from the mine, the shadows between the trees grow longer, darker. They seem to reach for us, sliding over the ground like oil on water. And always, that feeling of being watched, of being followed by something that's always just out of sight. The Morrison family. I need to focus on finding them, on doing my job. It's the only thing keeping me sane right now. But a small voice in the back of my mind wonders, what if I do find them? What state will they be in? And what's waiting for us at the center of Bone Hollow, where all the compasses point? Something tells me I'm going to find out soon, whether I want to or not. I don't know how much time has passed when I hear the singing. Two small voices, in perfect unison, singing ring round the rosy somewhere up ahead. Hello, I call out, my voice hoarse. Is someone there? The singing stops. Then, two little girls step out from behind a large oak tree. They're holding hands, dressed in matching blue dresses. The Morrison twins. They look unharmed, but something isn't right. They stand still, like dolls. Are you Mr. Morrison's daughters? I ask, approaching slowly. Rex hangs back, growling low in his throat. I'm Ranger Reeves. I've been looking. For you and your parents. The girls tilt their heads at the exact same time, like they're connected by invisible strings. When they finally speak, it's still in unison. We've been waiting for you, Mr. Reeves. They say, we knew you'd come. Emma told us. I freeze mid-step. What did you say? The girls smile, but it doesn't reach their eyes. Their eyes, I shine. My flashlight directly at them, and my blood turns to ice. Their eyes are completely black. No whites, no color. Just empty blackness like holes in their faces. Emma is with the Hollow Man now. They say, she wants you to join her. Rex barks furiously, lunging against his leash. The girls don't even flinch. Where are your parents? I manage to ask, though my mouth has gone dry. The Hollow Man took them. They answer, still smiling those terrible smiles. He takes everyone, in the end. He's been waiting for you for a long time, Mr. Reeves. I back away, pulling Rex with me, who is the Hollow Man. Instead of answering, the twins begin to sing again, turning to walk back into the forest. I should follow them. I know that. It's my job to bring them to safety. But every instinct I have screams that they're leading me into a trap. Wait, I call after them. They stop and look back over their shoulders. Follow us if you want to see Emma again, they say, and disappear into the darkness. I stand there, torn between duty and fear. Rex whines and presses against my leg, trembling. That's when I notice the trees around us have changed. They're forming a corridor, their twisted branches creating an arched pathway leading in the direction the twins went. At the end of this unnatural hallway, something tall and thin moves. In the shadows, a figure steps into a patch of moonlight. At first, I think it's a man on stilts. It has to be 12 feet tall, impossibly thin with arms that reach almost to the ground. Its skin is tight across its bones, like leather that's been stretched too far. But its face keeps changing. One moment it looks like a man, then a woman, then a child. Faces flowing into each other like melting wax. Then it wears Emma's face, perfect in every detail. Daddy, it says in her voice, I've missed you so much. My mind breaks a little then. I drop to my knees, unable to stand. This can't be real. None of this can be real. You're not my daughter, I choke out. The creature, the Hollow Man, smiles with Emma's mouth. But I know everything about her. I know her favorite color was yellow. I know she was afraid of thunderstorms but loved the rain. I know her last words to you were don't be sad, Daddy. I feel like I'm drowning. How could it know that? I never told anyone her last words. What do you want from me? I ask. The Hollow Man stretches Emma's face into a smile too wide for any human. I want you to remember, Danny. Remember the night Emma died. Images flash through my mind. The hospital, the phone call, me racing through the night in my truck, desperate to reach her before ... The headlights, the truck sliding on wet pavement, the crash. No, I whisper. No, that's not what happened. I made it to the hospital. I held her hand. I was there. You died in that crash. Danny, the Hollow Man says, now wearing my own face. You never made it to Emma. You've been wandering ever since, trapped between worlds, just like me. Rex suddenly leaps forward, breaking free of his leash. He charges at the Hollow Man, barking and snarling with a fury I've never seen. The creature hisses, its form rippling. Rex sinks his teeth into its leg, and the Hollow Man shrieks, a sound like metal tearing. Run, Daddy, Rex says in Emma's voice, even as he attacks. Run while you can. The Hollow Man's arm stretches impossibly. Grabbing Rex, my dog yelps once, then keeps fighting, speaking in Emma's voice the whole time. I love you, Daddy. Don't be sad. It's not your fault. I should run. I know I should, but I can't leave Rex. I can't fail someone else I love. I charge forward, pulling my hunting knife from my belt. The Hollow Man sees me coming and laughs, a sound like dry leaves rustling. Poor Danny, it says, still trying to save everyone but yourself. As I get closer, I realize the truth I've been running from since I entered Bone Hollow. I'm already dead, and this place is my personal hell. I run through the forest, branches whipping at my face. Behind me, the Hollow Man moves like a shadow, always just a few steps behind. It calls to me with Emma's voice, begging me to stop, to come back, to stay with her forever. Every word is a knife in my heart, but I keep running. The trees start to thin out, and ahead I see water, a small stream cutting through the hollow. The creature's voice turns angry, desperate. You can't leave. It shrieks. There's nowhere to go. You're dead, Danny. Dead. I reach the stream and splash into the cold water. The hollow man stops at the edge, hissing like a wounded animal. It can't cross. For a moment, I think I'm safe. Then I see it stretching, growing, reaching across the water with those impossible arms. Its fingers almost touch me. I know what you really want, it says. Its voice changing to sound like mine now. You want punishment. You want to suffer for not being there when she died. The truth of those words hits me hard. Part of me has been punishing myself, taking the most dangerous assignments, pushing everyone away, refusing to let go of my guilt. The sky above is starting to lighten. Dawn is coming. I don't know why, but I feel certain that sunrise is my only chance to escape. The hollow man knows it too. It's becoming more frantic, its form shifting wildly. Between shapes, it reaches further across the stream. Stay with me in the darkness, it begs, wearing Emma's face again. Don't leave me alone, Daddy. I pulled the wooden horse from my pocket one last time. I made this for Emma on her 5th birthday. She carried it everywhere. After she died, I couldn't bear to look at it, but I couldn't let it go either. Just like I couldn't let go of my guilt. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Emma, I whispered to the toy. I tried so hard to reach you. I would have given anything to hold your hand one last time. The first ray of sunlight breaks over the horizon, touching the treetops with gold. The hollow man shrieks, pulling back from the light. I know what I have to do. I take out my lighter, the one I've carried for years but barely use. My hands shake as I flick it open. I love you, Emma, I say, touching the flame to the wooden horse. And I have to let you go now. The toy catches fire, the dry wood burning quickly in my palm. It hurts, but I don't drop it. The pain feels right somehow. A final penance. The hollow man howls, a sound of pure rage and loss. As the wooden horse burns, the creature seems to shrink, to fold in on itself. The faces it wears flash by faster and faster men, women, children, all its victims over the years. You can't escape what you are. It screams. You'll come back. They always come back. The sun climbs higher, its light spreading through the trees. The burning toy in my hand is almost gone now, just ash and embers. I finally let the remains fall into the stream, where they hiss and go dark. As they do, the hollow man gives one final, terrible cry and collapses in on itself, folding away like paper burning from the inside out. In seconds, it's gone, leaving nothing but a silence that feels cleaner somehow. I stand there in the stream, watching the sunrise. For the first time since Emma died, the crushing weight of guilt seems lighter. Not gone, I don't think it will ever be completely gone, but bearable now. I turn and wade across the stream, toward the rising sun. I don't know what waits for me on the other side. Maybe the afterlife, maybe peace, maybe nothing at all. But whatever it is, I'm ready to face it. My name is Thomas Brennan. I've been a ranger in the Bridger-Teton National Forest for 15 years now. This morning started like many others, beautiful, peaceful, almost perfect. Too perfect, maybe. The morning frost sparkled on the pine trees around me, catching the early sunlight like thousands of tiny diamonds. Golden rays streamed through the branches overhead, making patterns on the forest floor that reminded me of those old church windows. The whole forest felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. I could hear the Snake River flowing nearby, water tumbling over smooth stones. In the distance, an elk bugled, that haunting sound they make during mating season. Ravens called to each other from somewhere up high, their voices echoing through the trees. Everything seemed so normal, so right. For the first time since Michael died, I felt like I could breathe again. My son, my only boy, gone just 3 months ago in a helicopter crash in Korea. The military telegram still burns in my memory like it was delivered yesterday. Sometimes, I think I can still feel the paper in my hands, still see the delivery boy's awkward expression as he handed me the news that destroyed my world. I reached for my wallet, pulling out the worn photo of Michael. My fingers trembled slightly, always do now, but something was wrong with the picture. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks. Michael's face, it was changing, aging, right there in the photograph. The youthful face of my 22-year-old boy was growing older by the minute. Lines forming around his eyes, hair graying at the temples. I dropped the wallet like it had burned me. This couldn't be happening. I fumbled for my military compass, an old habit when I needed grounding. The needle spun wildly before stopping, pointing not north, but east exactly 207 degrees. The exact direction where I had been standing when that telegram arrived, even though I was now 200 miles away from home. The forest suddenly felt colder, more hostile. My radio crackled to life beside me, making me jump. Instead of the usual chatter from headquarters, I heard the unmistakable sounds of gunfire, helicopter rotors, men shouting in Korean and English. Battle sounds, from a war zone thousands of miles away. I switched it off quickly, my heart pounding. The nearest town was Pinedale, at least 35 miles away through mountain trails that were becoming increasingly unfamiliar. I'd walked these paths for years, but now everything seemed different. A mule deer appeared between the trees ahead, watching me with those big liquid eyes. It stepped forward cautiously, then froze mid-step, completely still, not breathing. Its eyes caught the sunlight, and in them, I swear I could see reflections of a burning helicopter, flames consuming metal and flesh. The temperature plummeted. 1 minute I was comfortable in my ranger jacket. The next I could see my breath hanging in the air. 32 degrees, maybe colder. The sky darkened as clouds gathered overhead, not in the random patterns of nature, but in perfect geometric shape squares, triangles, hexagons, impossible formations that hurt my eyes to look at. When I looked back at the trail, my blood ran cold. The trail markers, those familiar wooden signs I'd helped install years ago, had moved overnight. They were arranged in a new pattern, visible only from where I stood. "Daddy, come home," they spelled out, in Michael's handwriting. I felt the forest watching me, waiting. The ground around my boots caught my attention, and I nearly screamed. Hundreds of dead insects, beetles, ants, flies, were arranging themselves in perfect military formation around me. Row after row, like tiny soldiers awaiting orders. Something was very wrong in my forest, and I was alone with whatever it was. Dr. Vasquez would be meeting me at the research station by noon, 6 miles away. I just needed to keep it together until then. Just keep walking, one foot in front of the other. But deep down, I knew the forest wouldn't let me leave. Not now, not when it had finally found me. I wasn't always a forest ranger. At 44, I'd lived more life than I sometimes wanted to remember. Before the tall pines and quiet lakes became my home, I was Captain Thomas Brennan, artillery officer in Korea. I still wake up some nights with the sound of those guns in my ears. Most people see my white hair and think I'm older than I am. It wasn't always this color. Just 3 months ago, it was salt and pepper. Then came the telegram about Michael. After that, every morning showed more white in the mirror. My hands started shaking too, especially when I touch anything metal. Dog tags, compasses, keys. The doctors call it a stress response. Michael was everything to me after his mother died. He joined the army against my wishes, wanting to make me proud. Just like Dad, he'd said. Now he was gone, in a helicopter. Crash caused by some mechanical failure. The same kind of equipment problem that had killed men under my command years before. I touched the inside pocket of my jacket, feeling the small box there. Inside was Michael's Purple Heart and his last letter to me. He'd written about hunting trips we would take when the war's over. Plans we'd never fulfill now. "Ranger Brennan, can you hear me?" Dr. Alina Vasquez's voice snapped me back to the present. She stood a few feet away, watching me with concerned eyes. 38 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she didn't look like the fancy psychologists I'd met at the VA hospital. "Sorry, Doc." Miles away. I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff. "That's why we're here," she said gently, setting down her heavy backpack. "The Veterans Administration wants to understand how wilderness settings affect PTSD symptoms. You're helping a lot of other veterans by participating in this study." What I hadn't told Dr. Vasquez was that this trip was my last chance. My supervisors were concerned about my mental state. One more incident like when I'd gotten lost for 2 days last month and they'd forced me into retirement. The thought of losing the forest too, after losing Michael, was unbearable. "Let's set up camp here," I suggested, pointing to a small clearing. "We can start your tests tomorrow." I didn't mention the strange things I'd seen that morning. Dr. Vasquez already knew about the experimental medication I was taking for PTSD. The doctor who prescribed it had warned about possible hallucinations. Maybe that's all it was, just side effects. But deep down, I knew better. Since Michael died, I'd been different. I'd hear helicopter rotors spinning when it was just the wind in the trees. I'd see burning wreckage in ordinary campfires. Once, I even called out Michael's name when a young hiker passed me on a trail. "Ranger Brennan, did you take your medication today?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice professional but kind. "Yes, ma'am." I didn't tell her I'd doubled the dose, hoping to stop the visions. As we set up the small tents, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The forest felt wrong. Watching, waiting. 15 years in these mountains had taught me to read the wilderness like a book, but now it was speaking a language I couldn't understand. "You seem tense," Dr. Vasquez observed, pulling out her notebook. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your anxiety right now?" I looked at her, wondering what she'd say if I told her the truth. If I described the insects in military formation, the aging photograph, the trail markers spelling out messages from my dead son. 4, I lied, just tired. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Tomorrow we'd hike deeper into the wilderness, to places I hadn't visited since before Michael died, places where the radio couldn't reach headquarters, places where no one would hear us if we needed help. Dr. Vasquez was carefully setting up her recording equipment, a bulky tape recorder and microphones to document our sessions. "You know, Brennan," she said casually, "many soldiers experience heightened sensory perception after trauma. Things might seem more vivid, more threatening. It's the brain's way of staying alert to danger." I nodded, watching as a line of ants marched in perfect formation up a nearby tree. "And what if the danger is real, Doc?" I asked quietly. "What if something's really out there?" She smiled reassuringly. "That's why we have you as our guide. If anyone can keep us safe in these woods, it's you." If only she knew how wrong she was. How could I protect anyone when I couldn't even trust my own eyes? When the forest itself seemed to be turning against me? As darkness fell, I stared into our small campfire, watching the flames dance. For just a moment, they took the shape of a burning helicopter, spinning down from the sky. Tomorrow would be worse. I could feel it in my bones. Dawn broke with a heavy mist hanging over our campsite. I'd barely slept, listening to the forest sounds, all night sounds that sometimes seemed like whispers calling my name. "Coffee," I offered Dr. Vasquez, who emerged from her tent looking surprisingly refreshed. "Thanks," she said, accepting the metal cup. "How did you sleep, Ranger Brennan?" "Fine," I lied again. Lying was becoming a habit. We packed up camp and started hiking deeper into the wilderness. I knew these trails like the back of my hand, or at least I used to. Now everything seemed slightly off, like someone had moved. All the landmarks just a few inches. "There's an old fire lookout about 3 miles ahead," I explained as we walked. "Good place to set up your equipment." Dr. Vasquez nodded, recording notes on a small tape recorder as we hiked. "And how often do you patrol this area?" Before I could answer, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, in the clearing ahead, was an elk carcass. Nothing unusual about that. Predators take down elk all the time. But this was different. "Wait here," I said, approaching slowly. The elk had been dead maybe 2 or 3 days, but growing from its antlers, impossible as it sounds, were metal tags. Military dog tags, like the ones soldiers wear. They weren't hanging from the antlers. They were growing out of them, like metal tumors. I reached out to touch one, and a taste filled my mouth. Sharp chemical, like aviation fuel. The sound hit me next. Screaming soldiers, the unmistakable sound of men dying in pain. I jerked my hand back. "Brennan, what is it?" Dr. Vasquez was beside me now, staring at the elk. "Don't you see them?" I asked, pointing at the antlers. She frowned, looking confused. "See what?" "The antlers are damaged." "Yes, but that's normal for the dog tags." I almost shouted. "They're growing right out of the bone." Her face shifted to that careful, neutral expression psychologists use when they think you're losing it. "There are no dog tags, Ranger Brennan. Maybe we should take a break." I looked back at the elk. The dog tags were still there, catching the morning sunlight. I could even read the names on them, all soldiers from my old unit in Korea, all dead now. We continued walking, but everything felt wrong. The trail kept looping back on itself. Twice I found myself facing landmarks we'd already passed, even though we'd been walking in a straight line. "Let's check your recording equipment," I suggested when we stopped for water. "Make sure it's working right." Dr. Vasquez nodded, pulling out her tape recorder. She rewound the tape and pressed play. Both our voices came through clearly, but we weren't talking about the hike or her research. The blood is everywhere. My voice said on the tape, I can't stop it. Alina is already gone. I'll be next. Dr. Vasquez's voice followed on the recording. The memory harvester takes us all in the end. No escape from what we've done. She snapped the recorder off, her face pale. That's not possible. We never said those things. Rewind it, I said, my mouth dry. Play it again. This time, the tape played our normal conversation about the trail ahead. Nothing about blood or a memory harvester. Equipment malfunction, Dr. Vasquez said shakily. That's all. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe it any more than I did. We pushed on, and the forest grew denser. The trees here were old, some probably standing since before the Civil War. Speaking of which, that's not right, I said, stopping again. In front of us stood a stone marker, the kind used to mark battlefields after the Civil War. It shouldn't be here. There were no Civil War battles fought in Wyoming. Yet there it stood, granite and real, with names carved into its face. The ground around it looked darker, almost like soil soaked with old blood. What year was the Civil War, Doc? I asked, not taking my eyes off the marker. 1861 to 1865, she answered automatically. Why? Because according to this marker, there was a battle here in 1863. 200 men died. She stepped forward to look, then froze. Brennan, there's nothing there. Just a regular trail marker. I pulled out my compass, needing something solid to ground me. As I watched, the needle began to change, morphing from metal into a tiny helicopter rotor that spun while pointing toward a ridge in the distance. We need to go that way, I said, pointing. That's not on our planned route, Dr. Vasquez said, cautiously. Trust me. Something was pulling me toward that ridge, something I couldn't explain. Our radio crackled suddenly, making us both jump. Through the static came voices, not rangers or emergency services, but a family speaking, rancher and his wife. Their voices panicked. They're all speaking Korean, I whispered. They're talking about building funeral pyres. Dr. Vasquez grabbed the radio. Hello, who is this? Do you need help? Only static answered her. I reached for my wallet again, needing to see Michael's face. But when I opened it, all the photos were empty frames. The people were gone, though I could still see their shadows at the edges, like ghosts refusing to disappear completely. As we approached the ridge, I spotted something half buried in the dirt, a small book, its leather cover cracked with age. I brushed off the soil and opened it carefully. It's a diary, I said, flipping through yellowed pages. From the Civil War, written by Thomas Brennan. Your name? Dr. Vasquez asked. My great-grandfather fought in the Civil War, but he never came west. He died in Pennsylvania. I read a passage aloud. May 15th, 1863. The memory thieves came again last night. They wear the faces of the men I've seen die. They take more than just your thoughts. They take your soul piece by piece. I looked up at Dr. Vasquez, whose professional composure was finally cracking. We need to turn back, she said firmly. This trip is affecting your symptoms. Wishard, her voice cut off as she stared past me, her eyes widening in horror. I turned to look. Through the morning mist, a line of soldiers marched in perfect formation. Not modern soldiers, Civil War soldiers, their uniforms tattered, their faces gaunt. They passed right through trees as if they weren't there, and behind them, the trees bore strange marks, not natural scars, but perfect burn patterns, like those left by napalm strikes. The air smelled of smoke and death. Do you see them? I whispered. She nodded slowly, her scientific certainty finally shattered. I see them. God help us. I see them. The trail ahead suddenly shifted, the landscape blurring. One moment we were in Wyoming wilderness. The next I was looking at a Korean hillside I recognized from nightmares. The place where I'd called in artillery on the wrong coordinates, where my men had died because of my mistake. What's happening? Dr. Vasquez grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. It's coming, I said simply. The memory harvester. It's found us. The forest fell completely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. And then we heard the sound of metal grinding against metal, coming closer with each passing second. The sound grew louder, metal scraping against metal, like a broken helicopter rotor. Dr. Vasquez and I stood frozen, watching the mist part ahead of us. It came slowly at first, a tall shape, walking on two legs, but not human, not even close. standing at least 9 feet tall. Its body looked like it was made from twisted pieces of metal and what might have been human flesh, all melted together. But the worst part was its face, or rather, faces. Dozens of faces covered its body, all people I knew. My soldiers who died in Korea, my wife, gone 10 years now to cancer, and front and center, wearing the most terrible expression of pain, was Michael's face. "Dad," it said, using my son's voice perfectly, "why didn't you save me?" Dr. Vasquez screamed beside me, falling to her knees. I wanted to run to her, to pull her away, but I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the ground. "What do you want?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. The creature tilted its massive head, Michael's face stretching into an unnatural smile. "What everyone wants, Thomas. Memories, pain, the taste of regret." It took a step toward us. The air around it seemed to bend and twist, like reality itself couldn't handle its presence. "Your son burned for 3 minutes and 22 seconds before he died," it said, still using Michael's voice. "He called for you the entire time." Something black and oily began to leak from my eyes. Not tears, something thicker, darker. When it hit the ground, images formed in the liquid memories of Michael as a boy, learning to fish, riding his first bike. The creature leaned down, drawing the black liquid toward itself like a magnet pulls iron. "Delicious," it whispered. "Your guilt is particularly sweet." I felt the memories physically leaving me, creating empty spaces in my mind that quickly, filled with something else, a crushing weight of guilt and regret, far heavier than what had been there before. Dr. Vasquez was experiencing the same thing. Black liquid streamed from her eyes while she stared at nothing, whispering names I didn't recognize. Andrea, Philip. Sarah, "I'm sorry, I failed you. Your patients who killed themselves," the memory harvester explained casually. She remembers each one, their faces as they realized her treatments wouldn't save them. The forest around us shifted again. The trees disappeared, replaced by a Korean hillside I remembered all too well. I could hear artillery in the distance, smell gunpowder and blood. "No," I whispered, "not this place." "Yes, this place," the creature said, now wearing the faces of my dead soldiers. "Where you gave the wrong coordinates, where your men died." Screaming your name, it was forcing me to relive my worst memory, feeding on the fresh pain it created. I tried to reach for my knife, but my hand passed right through it. The creature laughter sounded like metal grinding on bone. "Physical weapons can't hurt me," it said, "but I can hurt you." It reached out one long twisted finger and touched Dr. Vasquez on the forehead. She collapsed completely, her body shaking as if having a seizure, while more black liquid poured from her eyes. "Stop," I shouted. "Take me instead." The memory harvester tilted its head again, curious. "But I'm already taking you, Thomas. I've been taking pieces of you since Michael died. You've been feeding me for months." That explained the visions, the hallucinations. This thing had been haunting me, feeding on my grief and guilt, making it worse so it could feed more. The Korean hillside faded, replaced by a hospital room. In the bed lay a burned body, Michael, somehow still alive, despite injuries that should have killed him instantly. "Dad," the burned figure whispered, "it hurts so much." "This isn't real," I said, closing my eyes. "Michael died instantly. The report said so." "Did he?" the creature asked. "Or is that just what they told you to ease your pain? The easier memory to live with?" More spectral figures appeared around US soldiers, from different eras, all with the same hollow eyes and accusing stares. Civil War uniforms mixed with Korean and what looked like Vietnam fatigues, all of them pointing at me. "You lived while we died," they chanted together. "You deserve to suffer." Dr. Vasquez was still on the ground, but her eyes had opened. She was staring at her hands in horror as her fingernails slowly turned metallic, like tiny pieces of shrapnel were growing from her fingers. "It's contaminating her," I realized aloud. "Changing her." The memory harvester nodded, pleased. "She'd make a fine vessel. Her mind already holds so many traumatic memories from her patients, a feast waiting to be harvested." I felt a sudden burst of rage cut through my fear. This thing had been torturing me for months. It was hurting Dr. Vasquez, who had only tried to help me, and it was desecrating Michael's memory, using him as a weapon against me. "You're not my son," I said firmly, looking at Michael's face. "On the creature, my son loved me. He would never torture me like this." For just a moment, the creature seemed to flicker, like a bad television signal. Interesting, it said, its voice changing slightly. Your acceptance weakens me, but your guilt will return. It always does. The forest reappeared around us, but wrong, the trees bent at impossible angles. The sky a sickly green color. In the distance, I could see lights from a small town that shouldn't be visible from here. The elementary school, the creature said, following my gaze. Such young minds, full of small traumas waiting to grow. When I'm done with you two, I'll visit them next. Children's fear is particularly sweet. That was the moment I knew I had to destroy this thing, whatever the cost. It wasn't just haunting me anymore, it was threatening innocent people, children. Dr. Vasquez was struggling to her feet, her hands now completely transformed into metallic claws. Brennan, she gasped, her voice distorted. I can feel it, ... inside my mind. Taking control, the memory harvester laughed again. She's fighting bravely. Most people surrender immediately. I looked around desperately for anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes fell on the Civil War diary I'd dropped earlier. Something gleamed beside it, a bayonet, ancient but somehow untarnished, its metal catching the strange green light. I lunged for it, my hand closing around the handle. Unlike my knife earlier, this felt solid in my grip. The creature hissed, actually backing up a step. Blessed by sacrifice, it said, eyeing the bayonet warily. Forged from the weapons of men who died with honor, not shame. I raised the bayonet, feeling strength flow through me. My son died with honor, I said, and I won't let you use him against me anymore. The memory harvester roared, Michael's face contorting with rage. Behind it, Dr. Vasquez had gotten to her feet. Her eyes met mine, and somehow I knew what she was planning. No, I mouthed to her, don't. She gave me a sad smile. It's already inside me, Thomas, she said, but I can use that connection. I can weaken it from within. Before I could stop her, she rushed forward and grabbed the creature from behind, her metallic hands sinking into its twisted flesh. Both of them screamed a sound so terrible, I'll hear it in nightmares for the rest of my life. The memory harvester tried to shake her off, but Dr. Vasquez held on. Black liquid now pouring from every part of her eyes, nose, mouth, even her fingertips. Now, Thomas, she shouted. While I have it distracted, I charged forward with the bayonet, aiming for the center of the creature where Michael's face watched me with those terrible eyes. I forgive myself, I said as I drove the blade home, and I honor those who died, including my son. The memory harvester let out a wail that shook the trees around us. Light burst from the wound, blinding me. I felt myself falling into darkness. The last thing I heard was Dr. Vasquez's voice, strangely peaceful. I can see them all now, Thomas, all the memories. So much pain, but so much beauty too. Then silence. I woke up to the sound of helicopter rotors for a moment. Panic gripped me. Was I back in Korea? Was the memory harvester still torturing me with visions? But the helicopter was real. Search and rescue, hovering overhead, spotlights cutting through trees. I was lying on my back in a small clearing. The normal forest had returned, no twisted trees, no green sky. Just Wyoming wilderness under a clear blue morning sky. How long had I been unconscious? Dr. Vasquez, I called out, my voice hoarse. There was no answer. I struggled to my feet, my whole body aching like I'd been in a car crash. The bayonet was still clutched in my right hand, but it looked different now, an old, rusty piece of metal, not the gleaming weapon I remembered. 20 feet away, I found her. Dr. Elena Vasquez lay perfectly still, her eyes open and staring at the sky. Her hands were normal again, no metal, no transformation, but her expression was haunting, not peaceful, not frightened, but knowing, like someone who had seen too much to ever forget it. She wasn't breathing. No, I whispered, dropping to my knees beside her. Alina, please. The helicopter landed in a larger clearing nearby. I could hear voices calling, searching for us. We'd been reported missing after failing to check in for 3 days. 3 days, it had felt like only hours. The rescue team found us quickly. They tried CPR on Dr. Vasquez, but I knew it was useless. She was gone, her mind filled with centuries of stolen trauma. Too much for any human to bear. What happened? A young ranger asked me as they loaded her body onto a stretcher. I couldn't answer. What could I possibly say? That a memory-eating monster had killed her. That she'd sacrificed herself to save me, to save everyone. Heart attack, maybe. One of the medics suggested. We'll know more after the autopsy. They examined me next, concerned about my mental state. I didn't speak, didn't react. They called it catatonic shock. I let them think that. It was easier than the truth. The helicopter took us back to civilization. Dr. Vasquez to the morgue, me to the hospital. Days passed in a blur of doctors, questions, and concerned faces. My supervisor visited, talking gently about retirement, about taking time to heal. I nodded at all the right moments, took the pills they gave me, answered questions with simple yes or no when possible. They were waiting for me to break down, to show signs of the PTSD they all knew I had. But something had changed inside me. I wasn't healed far from it, but I was different. A week after they found us, I was sitting in the hospital garden when I noticed an orderly walking past. Nothing unusual about him, young guy, maybe 25, doing his job. But around him, like a dark cloud only I could see, floated images. His memories. I saw a car crash, a little girl's funeral, a mother crying his pain, visible to me somehow. That's when I understood what had happened. When the memory harvester died, some of its power had transferred to me. Not the hunger, thank God, but the ability to see others' traumatic memories. I was discharged 2 weeks later. The official report said Dr. Vasquez died of a sudden brain aneurysm. Her family seemed to accept this, grateful that she hadn't suffered. If they only knew. I did retire from the Ranger service, but I didn't stop working. Instead, I found a new purpose. Now I volunteer at the VA hospital, helping veterans with PTSD. My intuition about what they're going through is remarkable. The doctors say, I seem to know exactly what memories haunt each person, exactly what they need to hear. Of course, I do. I can see their traumas floating around them like dark shadows. But here's the strange part. Sometimes, when the memories are particularly painful, they start to take physical form. Only I can see them, twisted, shadowy creatures feeding on guilt and regret. Small memory harvesters, growing stronger with each feeding. And when no one is watching, I destroy them. A touch, a whispered word of forgiveness. Sometimes even the old bayonet I keep hidden in my office. The veterans feel immediate relief, though they don't know why. It's like a weight lifted, they tell me. How did you do that? I just smile and say, sometimes accepting the past is the only way to free yourself from it. I still see Michael sometimes. Not the twisted version the memory harvester showed me, but my real son smiling, at peace. Maybe it's just my imagination, maybe not. Dr. Vasquez visits too, in dreams. She's different now, her eyes filled with both terrible knowledge and incredible compassion. Was it worth it? I asked her once, in a dream so vivid it felt real. Every memory contains a lesson, she said. Even the painful ones, especially those. I don't know if there are more memory harvesters out there. I don't know if the one we destroyed was unique or just one of many. But I do know my purpose now. Some nights, I walk the hospital corridors and see shadows gathering around the beds of those who suffer most. I quietly enter those rooms and do what I must. The patients sleep more peacefully afterward. The doctors call it remarkable recovery. I call it protecting the innocent. After all, memories can heal as well as harm. It just depends on who's doing the harvesting. I keep Michael's photograph in my wallet again. It doesn't change anymore, doesn't age. But sometimes, when I look at it just right, he seems to be smiling a little differently, a little knowingly, as if to say, I'm proud of you, Dad. And maybe, finally, I'm a little proud of myself too.